What if a parallel world held the Winchesters' secrets? This is Dean talking. I was 5 when I carried baby Sammy out of the burning house. Well, a couple months shy of 5. Same difference. Dad barely made it out before the heat blew the windows out of the nursery. It was the scariest thing I had seen up to that point. I hadn't seen anything yet. When Dad got to me, he picked us both up together and we went a safe distance from the house. A neighbor called the fire department and we sat there on the hood of the Impala, watching our home become a war zone between firefighters and flames. After the shock wore off a little, it hit me. Hey, I was little. Little kids are kind of slow on the uptake. I said, "Where's Mom?" Dad just sat there a minute. Then he took Sammy to the back of the car, opened the door and started strapping him in. "Dad, where's Mom?" I asked louder. And this is where it all started. Dad deciding how to handle me. How was he going to distract me from the fact that my mother was dead? He put his hands on my shoulders and looked at me more seriously than I think I'd ever seen him before. "Dean, right now the most important thing is keeping Sam safe. That's what we need to focus on. Will you help me?" I was scared as heck. Why am I not going ahead with the cuss words? Our host doesn't like it. It was hard at first, but I'm getting used to it. But what was I going to say? No. I already fancied myself a little man, and I wasn't going to wimp out at the 11th hour. "Yes, sir." I think I was crying. I don't remember. Anyway, Dad opened and closed the front passenger door for me and then got in on the other side. "Seatbelt, Dean." I couldn't say anything. There was too big a lump in my throat. I buckled up and looked out the window at the inferno that had been our home. We went to the police station first. I don't remember much from that. I had to hold Sam most of the time, and after a while I got really sleepy. Dad finally put a couple of chairs together, facing each other, in the waiting room, like a crib with the arms on either side, and put me and Sam in it to take a nap. "Sam, I know that wasn't the best constructed sentence. Shut up." Someone brought a bottle of milk or formula to feed Sam at one point. Next thing I remember, Dad was waking me up, saying we needed to hit the road again. I would have nodded off again. But the sun started to come up. We drove and drove. We stopped long enough to use a restroom, get breakfast, and head out again. On and on and on. Dad stopped to make more calls. More driving. Finally, we stopped at a motel, and Dad instructed me to stay quiet and not open the door for anyone but him. He needed to go to the store. He came back with travel food, sandwich stuff, granola bars, dried fruit, etc., and diapers. Bottles, and baby formula. We needed the formula badly, because Sam hadn't eaten at all that day. All he'd had was a bottle of apple juice. Mom had never given him juice before. He was still on milk. When Dad was mixing up the formula, somehow that told me that this was final. Mom was dead. I hadn't asked, but of all the calls Dad made, I knew none of them were to connect him with Mom. He would have told me she was all right. That much I knew, even at a few months shy of 5 years old. So, that was our first day on the road. There were a lot more like it after that. Dad probably blew through his bank account in the first couple of months. Then he sold the house, or rather the property and what was left of the house. Considering it needed rebuilding, I'm sure he didn't get much for it. I don't know if the mortgage was paid off at that point. Then he had to find work. Paying work, not just the kind of work that might help him figure out who did this to his family. He tried picking up some odd jobs here and there, but eventually his research-type work led him to people like Bobby and Pastor Murphy, people he could safely leave us with while he did legitimate work. They tried to talk him out of revenge obsession with arguments like, "The boys need stability," and so on, but Dad didn't listen to them much. I didn't understand much of the grown-up talk. Just enough to know that someone or something had killed my mom and burned my house down. For all I knew, it was the freaking big bad wolf. But whatever Bobby or Pastor Murphy or anyone else said, I always believed my dad was right. Dad was smart. Dad was the best man in the world. If Dad said we needed to keep traveling, we needed to keep traveling. Period. Then he started hustling people. Cards, pool, you name it. Then the credit card fraud. And helping people. For every person whose identity he borrowed, he saved 10. That's probably how he lived with it. It's how I did. It was a matter of numbers. If you help more than you hurt, you're okay. Things are so simple when you're a kid. Blank, underscore, blank. Sam here. Most of the flashbacks to us being kids in our canon are pretty accurate. Except I don't think my eyes used to be that blue. I figure they just cast that kid because he was the best actor of all their auditioners, and they figured the eye color didn't matter too much. And to be fair, the kid is a really good actor. Better than Dean's child actor. To expand on Christmas, Dean was my Santa Claus for several years. I didn't know until very recently. But when Dad brought presents to whatever motel we were staying in, he told Dean that he and I could both be surprised Christmas morning, but not believe in Santa, or Dean could wrap our presents himself. Spoiling the surprise for himself, but making Santa real for me. So, starting when I was about 3, Dean started wrapping my presents and his own for Christmas. He always pretended to be surprised. By the time I was old enough to be suspicious of how badly Santa wrapped them, Dad forgot to get presents anyway. Whatever case he was on was too important to stop for a holiday. Castiel telephone. LS me, that was a mistake. Something about holidays renewing protections or something. I'll have to ask him more about that later. There was that one year at that school where I beat up my bully and Beck. I'm a big little man for a day or two. That one teacher who saw talent in me and started me on a path to Stanford. Bones the dog was not a golden retriever. He was a mutt who wandered onto campus one day. Some people said someone dumped him there as a prank. I loved that dog. When I got a place with Jessica, I decided to give Bones to a frat brother that I knew would dote on him. I didn't really have enough time for him. Dean. Whoa, so you're skipping over all the fights with Dad and running away and all. Sam. This is my section. Let me do things my own way. Yes, there were fights. Dad told me he wouldn't foot the bill for some university. I said I'd take care of it myself, and he laughed. Actually, he and Dean both laughed. See, they thought I was planning to get money their way, and I had a really hard time lying back then. I wanted to yell at them, tell them my real plan, but I knew it was better if they thought I would fail. I didn't tell them about the essays I had mailed out. Did NT tell them when the notice arrived, the notice informing me that I'd won a scholarship covering my whole first year if I maintained a 3.0 GPA. 3.0, heck, that would be easy. I didn't tell them when my enrollment started. Didn't tell them about the bus ticket. Didn't tell them my bags were packed. Didn't tell them I was leaving. Because if I told them, they'd try to stop me. Once I was there, why couldn't just show up and make a scene? I was technically an adult, so they had no right to make me leave. I was free. I had periods of guilt, of course. How could I do that to them after they took care of me my whole life? And other lamentations. Mostly I shoved that down and did my best to enjoy college. And I did, honestly. I was studying pre-law, for a profession that could allow me to help people legally. Maybe somewhere in the back of my mind I also thought I could help get my dad and brother out of trouble if they got arrested or something, but that definitely wasn't near the top. I fell in love with Jess in sophomore year, and before long we were talking about moving in together. I felt good about it. This was what people were supposed to do. Work hard, find their person, build something together. Sure, there were creepy things in the dark, but the odds of running into one were slim enough. Besides, I knew how to keep ghosts away. The only thing that really worried me was the nightmares. They had been getting worse, more frequent, and more related to my waking life. I was starting to dream about people I knew, including Jess. Some dreams about her were fun. But one of them, the recurring one, wasn't. I'd have done anything to stop having that dream. Blank, underscore, blank. Dean again. I guess we're skipping the rest of childhood for now. Works for me. Dad and I went our separate ways to work different cases now and then, I know. Never split the party, and for my 25th birthday, he gave me the Impala. That was huge. Best present ever. Sam had been gone 2.5 years? Something like that, when I finished up a case and called Dad to see how his was going. He didn't answer. No biggie. I took the day off, got myself a burger, some pie, laid. Next day, still no answer. Still no big deal. I head back toward California, taking my time, taking in the sights. It's been a few days and I haven't heard from Dad. I start researching what Dad was hunting. I need to know what I'm getting into if I go join him. Especially if it turned out to be something he couldn't handle alone. The longer Dad doesn't answer me, and the more I research, the more I think this isn't something I should walk into alone. I need backup. I check around, see what other hunters might be available. But I rarely worked with other hunters, and almost never without Dad. This felt like a family matter. I started thinking about the fact that Sam wasn't much further away from me than Dad's case. But Sam was practically a civilian now. Would he go with me? Even for Dad? Heck, the last time he and Dad talked, Dad was catching him trying to sneak his bags out the window so we wouldn't see him taking them out the front door. When he knew he was caught, Sam had said, "Guess there's no point doing this the hard way," and carried his bags to the front door. Then Dad told him, "If you go out that door, don't you ever come back." I wanted to butt in. To say, "Come on Dad, don't be like that." But I also wanted Sam to say it. I wanted him to bridge the gap. No one did. Sam went out the door. Part of me wanted to be proud of him for standing up for himself, but I was too hurt. He wasn't just walking out on Dad. He left me, too. Sam. Okay, you need to pick a verb tense. I realize you're doing a flashback thing here, but you keep going from past to present and back. Dean. Leave me alone. Grammar Nazi. Where was I? Oh, right. So, I had the feeling Sam was not going to give two flying rips about Dad being missing, but I had this other feeling like maybe this could be the first step toward putting our family back together. Maybe he missed us. I wouldn't tell him of course, but I sure missed him. Even though Dad and I were still hunting Mom's killer together, I felt purposeless. Because Dad had used Sam as my coping mechanism. As long as Sammy was safe, I was doing my job and I didn't have to think about Mom being dead. And now Sam's safety was pretty much out of my hands. That did it. I had to try. I turned off toward Palo Alto. Blank, _ blank. Sam again. You know the rest. Dean picked me up. We worked the case together. I wish to God that I could tell you Jessica's death was one of the things in my canon that I'm not sure was real, but I can't. I know that was real. I can tell you one thing our canon got wrong right from the beginning. We're constantly talking about salting and burning bones, right? Find the remains, salt them and burn them. But whenever we look into a grumpy spirit and discover that the body was already cremated, we're like, there must be an object or something tying the spirit here. Hello. The average crematorium doesn't add salt to the body before burning it. And here's another. Our news flash. Embalming fluids often include salts. So, if there are bones, we salt them if we can, just in case the embalming fluid wasn't enough, then burn them. If the person was already cremated, we sneak some salt into the urn. Bottom line, cremation isn't enough. I understand that fire pretty permanently destroys just about everything that can melt or burn. But salt is a preservative. I always took the process for granted, and only recently asked Castiel why salt and fire work together to keep the spirits from returning. Here's an approximation of what he told me. Ordinarily, salt would preserve a body from decay. Symbolically, treating remains with salt prevents them from being corrupted and makes it less likely that a spirit will hold to the bitterness of its life. Furthermore, it harks back to the covenant God made with King David, to preserve his bloodline on the earth, heralding the advent of the Messiah. Malevolent spirits lose their enthusiasm for mischief at the mention of Jesus. As for the fire, it has a refining nature, it gives off light, and it consumes. Consuming the remains looses the spirit's anchor from this world. The fire purifies the remains, ending the decay and replacing it with fertile ash, symbolizing how death opens the way for the next generation. The blaze of fire recalls the bush from which God called Moses, as well as the pillar of fire that guided the Israelites and protected them from the Egyptians. The spirit itself is not destroyed, but instead guided away as it always should have been, back within reach of the reapers. I swear, whenever I ask him a question, it's either, I'm not authorized to answer that, or an encyclopedic answer. The way he explains spiritual warfare and doctrine and so forth, it sounds more like science. I guess that makes sense, considering that science as we know it now is an outgrowth of alchemy, which is an outgrowth of Christianity. The Holy Grail, the Philosopher's Stone, the nuclear reactor, where does superstition end and biology begin? I've seen those lines blurred a lot in my time. And let me tell you, some of the things Saws has told us make my head spin. Which ought to give you an idea of what it does to Dean. Dean. I'm not stupid, you know. I'm just not a nerd. If it were street smarts we were talking about, you'd look like a second grader. Sam. Whatever. Anyway, Saws told us about thin GS like quantum entanglement as a proof of the deity of Christ. You're skeptical. Of course you are. But then, you've probably never had a sit-down chat with an angel. Dean and Sam insist that I relay what happened today, January 15, 2026. But I need to get a few things straight first. I am Castiel, an angel of the Lord. It would take several chapters to fully explain what that means, so I will skip most of it. For now, I will give you insight into 6 aspects of my history. 1. The angels were created before anything in what you would call the physical universe. We are older than anything except God himself. Death is not older than God. In his current role, he's not even as old as the human race. 2. Lucifer wasn't exiled because he refused to bow to humans. This is at best a partial account of what happened. Lucifer rebelled before the humans were created. He was proud and ambitious, and determined to make himself equal with God, if not superior to him. Then God created your world and threw down a challenge. Lucifer made a terrible wager with him. God would create humans with complete free will, even the freedom to choose direct, purposeful disobedience of God and denial of his supremacy. If they chose God in the face of temptation, instead of going their own way, Lucifer would be confined to a pit for the rest of eternity, cut off from God's light, love, and influence. However, if the humans chose to oppose God and go their own way, God would admit that Lucifer was his equal. God had a counter-offer. All of the above, with an exception. If the humans chose to disobey, to turn their backs on him, or even to oppose him directly, they could still return to grace if great enough atonement was made, and thus God would still win the wager. Lucifer scoffed at this proposal. And I'll tell you why in my next point. 3. Evil is not a thing. I don't mean it doesn't exist. It exists in the way that shadows exist. Dean once said that he could accept bad things happening to good people if there were no God. But if there was a God, how could he allow the world to be the way that it is? You must understand that evil, or even catastrophe, is not the presence of something malevolent, but it is the absence of God. God is perfection. He is love. He is light. When he is allowed to fill every hidden recess of the world, no evil is found. It was so at creation. There were no storms, no disasters, no tragedies, no selfish intentions, no pride, only wonder, delight, benevolence, growth, health. When sin entered the world, perfection was shattered. When a child gets cancer, men ask, why would God do this? They might as well ask, why would the light make a shadow like this? It is not the light that casts the shadow. It is the obstacle to the light that casts the shadow. God does not give children cancer. Men's sins prevent God from filling every corner of the earth with life and abundance. As I said, God is perfection. He is eternal, and he who mars eternal perfection deserves an eternal punishment. And that is why Lucifer scoffed. No man could ever hope to fully atone for any sin against an eternal, perfect God. 4. That is why it's a good thing God had what you would call an ace up his sleeve. When Lucifer struck that deal, he never considered that the eternal, perfect God would be willing to take on the punishment himself. To suffer his own wrath, to give up his perfect, sinless life. Eternally good beyond any comparison of any wrong ever committed. Lucifer never saw the Christ coming because he would never have sacrificed himself for anyone. 5. Lucifer convinced other angels to go along with his rebellion, and that he would win the wager with God. Over time, what little humans knew about this wager got turned into the story of Satan refusing to bow to Adam. In a way, he did reject humans. But it wasn't in this literal way. 6. Angels don't possess people like demons do. Rarely even with permission. God provides shapes for us to wear when we appear to humans. And they vary depending on their purpose. Most of the time, the people we deal with never know that they've encountered an angel. I took this form from a human who died years before I met the Winchesters. Jimmy doesn't exist, at least not as he does in our canon. This history is all fresh in my mind, though it happened thousands of years ago. No, not millions or billions, but that's another discussion for another day. Because I've been trying to explain it to Dean lately, and some to Sam as well. They have been asking a lot of questions finally, and I'm only too happy to answer when I can. As for what happened today, well, this is a little embarrassing. Dean, you tell them. Blank, _ blank. Winchester Confidential. Interlude touched by a masseuse. Okay, this is Dean. This is a true story, mind you. It happened today in your world. Mairead is a woman, right? Get your pervy minds out of the gutter. We live in her mind and use her to interact with your world. But it's not like we're possessing her. If I look down, even when I'm in front, I see my own body. I have to work hard to see hers, and even then it's not a clear picture, except her face in the mirror. Even that takes effort. When she gets dressed in the morning, if I'm getting dressed at the same time, I see my clothes, my body. That's just how it works, and she likes it that way. So anyway, as with most women, every month this thing happens to her. The guys around here have learned to deal with it. Basically, some poor sob gets stuck with the symptoms, which they call managing the pain, for Mairead. And according to them, it's usually the newest alter who gets pain duty. So, when Mairead got bitten by a dog, it was no surprise when I got a revisitation of some hellhound wounds. Hurt like a mother, but it also made me realize that dogs are just dogs. They're really not that scary compared to hellhounds. Well, the time of month was coming up, and Sam and I had been dreading it and kind of joking back and forth because we were pretty sure one of us would get it. I told Sam it would be him because he's more like a girl, and he said it would me because I already had the dog bites. So she'd want to pile the wump on me. We kidded about it a lot, but honestly both of us were a little worried. Then yesterday, Saz dropped in first thing in the morning and complained of a pain in his stomach. We had just watched the episode where Rachel knifes him pretty good in the ribs, so we thought maybe it was psychosomatic. Thanks, Sam. But then later in the day, the red tide showed up and all of a sudden we realized, Saz is the new guy. He first showed up here after we did. He's stuck with the Dementor attack. That's a Harry Potter reference, Sommet. Thing that sucks the joy out of you and chocolate is the only thing that helps. Sounds like a period, right? I'm not used to explaining my metaphors. We pity the guy, of course, and we're trying to be pals and help him out. But it's kind of funny. I'm sorry Saz, but it is. An angel with cramps. We gave him chocolate, and even let him have a slumber party with us. This thing apparently makes us a little girly, and, get this, he actually slept. If you're a fan of the show, you know angels don't need to sleep. Castiel. Please tell the part of the story that's important. Wow. Inside voice, Saz. So, the next day we have to go to Mairead's job, and he's still managing the pain, so he has to go too. We dosed him up on a leave before we left, which helped, and we gave him hot chocolate after an hour or so at work. But then the pain came back in the afternoon, and we had to hunt up some ibuprofen. He was not happy. I mean, this really got him down. It wasn't so funny anymore. Our friend was hurting. He's never one to sit back and let other people do the work, but he was dragging. Well, then the boss mentions his masseuse is coming by that night. I won't go into detail about her, no, unfortunately or maybe fortunately for my attempts to reform, she's not some hot young thing with a sweet rack and anyway, except to say that she's a friend of the people we work for and she offers massages as a side hustle. So, I said it was Cass's lucky day. Saz goes, you of all people should understand that there's no such thing as luck, what's a masseuse? To which I replied, it's the other kind of shoulder angel. For some reason, he didn't seem enthusiastic. We tried to convince him that this would be a good thing, but he seemed suspicious, right up until he was supposed to get undressed. I don't see why I have to remove so much clothing. It's not a trick, I swear. Tell him, Sam. So, Sam does. It's not a trick. Even our friend Vixen, not her real name of course, weighed in via text. It's really not. Easier access to musculature. Well, he stripped to his skivvies and got on the table, and then a funny thing happened. The masseuse told him that she had been told there would only be 2 massages that night, our boss and another lady, but God had told her to prepare for 3. Not only that, but as she was preparing, he kept telling her, make sure you take 3. Make sure you prepare for 3. 3 sheets, 3 face cradles, etc. When Saz heard that, his whole demeanor changed. He wasn't totally comfortable, but he didn't resist at all anymore. Sam and I were just about grinning at each other because we could tell Saz was happier than he'd been in a long time. He hadn't been sure how God felt about him being in the wrong world, or if he was even recognized as an angel here. Or if he was just an insignificant speck of nothing in some chick's imagination. But this was almost like God talking to him directly. Saz, you wanna take over from here? Blank, _ blank. Castiel. It's true, I wasn't completely comfortable, but I felt at peace. My father had sent something to me. He wouldn't send me something that wasn't good for me. The woman's hands were cold at first, but they soon warmed against my skin. She worked on my back, taking her time, giving Mairead some much-needed help with her lower back before coming up to my shoulders again. She kept saying how tight the muscles between my shoulders were, right where my wings attached to my body, and she's not wrong. She also assessed that I was under a great deal of stress and advised me to let that go. Of course, she didn't know about my wings, and she was addressing these things to Mairead, not me, but I believe my father was guiding her to tell me what I needed to hear, too. Sometimes she put pressure on a nerve or other sensitive area and I tensed, but Dean stayed by my side, reminding me that this was for my good, that I needed to relax. It was very kind of him. Dean is a surprisingly kind person under the tough exterior. He says I shouldn't include that because he doesn't want anyone to know, but I have written what I have written. He and Sam wanted me to recount this incident. So that's what I'm doing. Mairead discovered the first time she got a massage from this lady that they were both Christians. So, they had interesting discussion about the Bible, context of biblical culture. The Sabbath, gender roles, the age of the disciples. It was supposed to be a half-hour massage, but the lady said she wanted to work on Mairead's neck as well, if she didn't mind going overtime. Which of course, she didn't. It was so heartening to hear a real, passionate conversation between 2 women of faith, especially when my recent company has been men of little faith and much tarnish. Dean. Hey, we're trying, man. Castiel. I know. Anyway, she said she didn't mind giving me the extra time because I was so tight, and that I needed what she called an emergency massage. I thought again about what she had said about the 3rd massage. Just at the moment I thought about it, she said, that's so funny that God told me I would need to prepare 3 instead of 2. I couldn't deny it at all now. My father was talking to me, telling me that he saw me, he knew where I was, and that he cared for me, no matter if I was in my correct world or not. I would be a bad son if I did not offer him a word of praise here. Blessed be my Father for his loving kindness. I will praise him with my being. I offer thanks that he is nothing like the pitiful rendition in the series known as Supernatural. He is goodness and love and light, a light that never fails. Thank you. Blank, _ blank. Sam. I feel like that needs an amen. Dean. Raising a cup of tea and wishing it were a bottle of beer. Amen. Drinks. Sam. Season 6 spoilers here. If you don't want them, skip this section. Boy oh boy, from a high to an epic low. We had a hard time getting Castiel out of bed this morning. He was so sleepy. Not a good sign for an angel. He's still dealing with those cramps. We had gotten to the finale of season 6 and had to leave off in the middle. We finished it on our lunch break and it broke Saz. I mean, he was completely shattered. Dean tried to tell him that our canon isn't exactly like our personal history, that most of this probably didn't really happen to us. But Saz wasn't hearing him. As soon as Canon Saz said, I am God, our Saz bristled, and when he followed it up with, a better one, our Saz started saying, no, 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 first in a whisper, and then in a frantic, low voice. When the cliffhanger hit, he put his face in his hands, groaning and speaking incoherently. We were concerned, of course, and Dean started right in with the big brother routine he usually reserves for me. Saz, it's okay. That isn't you. Even patting him a little on the shoulder. Saz acted like he didn't hear him. Oh God, forgive me. You haven't done anything. You hear me. You didn't do that. But Saz went right on with, I'm sorry, and I would never pretend to be your equal, let alone your superior, and, please, God, help me. I'm not sure and he melted off the couch and oozed onto the floor, but he was pretty much a puddle down there, tears and everything. I had no clue what might help him, but I felt so bad for him. I mean, he's my friend too. Levi, another of Maraid's alters, not from our canon, was texting Maraid's friend Vixen. How are we supposed to go back to work with a broken, inconsolable angel on our hands? After a little conference, Dean took the phone and sent. He keeps apologizing to God as if the big guy will smite him or something. Castiel, sucking it up and reviving enough to see the text said, I'm not afraid of being smitten, Dean. If I did that, I would deserve it. That meaning call himself God, I assume. Okay, I don't want to lose fellowship with my father after he so graciously reached out to me last night. Fellowship, for those of you who didn't grow up in church, basically means intimacy, favor, admittance to the presence of God in prayer. All of that is off-kilter at best if you commit a sin. And stays that way until the sin is confessed and repented. I don't know if that's how it works for angels, but it sounded like it. I told him, come on, he's not that fickle, right? Levi cut in, guys, he's in shock. He's not thinking straight. And once he said that, I knew he was right. Logic probably wasn't going to work right now. We fell back on soothing, offering him water, etc. Then Dean shocked me by sitting on the floor and scooping him into a hug, trench coat and all. It's okay, Saz. God knows you, right? He knows you wouldn't do something like that. It's okay. Slowly, Saz let his head down onto Dean's shoulder. He didn't speak, just blinked slowly while his last tears dried on his face. I sighed quietly. It seemed like the worst was over. Blank. Winchester Confidential. To Wendigo. Dean talking. The Wendigo incident was a little exaggerated in our canon. And unfortunately, we didn't find Haley's brother alive. It kept Roy alive because he was the most recent victim. He's the one we managed to save, not Tommy Collins. I wish things were different, but reality bites. Sam didn't want to get mixed up in this case in the first place. The show got that right. He just wanted to find Dad, sort out whatever mess he was in, and get back to finding what killed Jessica. Can't blame him, I guess. I tried to keep things light. I joked that I hated camping. As if that were the problem back there, and not the man-eating Wendigo and his bloody trail of victims. Sam wasn't easily distracted. He got all big for his britches and said he was going to drive. Okay, so he drove. I was going to humor him. I knew I was lucky he didn't cut and run. He drove us to a motel and we got some serious, badly needed rest. Then we started trying to figure out where Dad was again. At least, he did. I mostly looked for another case. Because deep down, I was sure we'd hear if Dad had been killed, and if he hadn't, I figured he wouldn't be findable until he was ready. So, I might as well look for a case to work in the meantime. That's right, I was kind of playing Sam. I did want him to help me find Dad. I was worried, but I also kind of just wanted to get Sammy back into practice. I wanted to know he could take care of himself, and I hoped he would decide that this was his life now. Because when Dad and I were apart, it didn't feel so much like the family business. It felt like flying solo, and while a lot of hunters did that, I knew it was dangerous. And lonely. No one to watch your back. I didn't like it. I was out cold that first night. Don't remember if I dreamed about anything. But the second night at that motel, I started having this nightmare. The Wendigo had Sam, and I was trying to get to him, but it was carving pieces off him and eating them. Sorry if you're squeamish, but imagine how I felt. I woke up and I could still hear Sam, sounding like he was in pain, maybe crying, protesting. No, something I couldn't understand. Jess. Oh God, Dean. It was like we were kids again. Dad was away somewhere, leaving us boys just waiting for him. Sam knew there were monsters in the dark and he was scared. I rolled out of bed and went to sit on his, putting my hand on his shoulder. Sam, wake up. You're okay. He woke up with a gasp, grabbing onto my forearm. It's okay. We're at a motel. You were having a dream. Sam's breathing slowed. He loosened his grip on me. You all right? Yeah, sorry. Don't worry about it. I went back to my own bed. Have better dreams, okay? Dream about Angelina Jolie. Sam sighed. He was probably already half asleep again. Being alone sucked. I had nightmares of my own. But lately, they had just been about getting trapped or hurt or killed myself. Now that Sam was with me again, apparently I was going to go back to dreaming about those things happening to him. That sucked too. Castiel. We left off writing for a day, and much has happened. After I had what Dean calls my meltdown, and after making it through the workday, we came home to watch more of our canon and try to get through the atrocity of my counterpart's betrayal. But after a while, I felt the need to pray and asked everyone to leave me alone. Except Dean. For some reason, I didn't mind him staying in the room. While I prayed earnestly that the events of my canon would not come to pass, that God would strengthen me against the temptation of power and control, another angel appeared in a glow of blue light. I had heard of this angel from the alternate personalities here. His name is Leo. You may know him from the series, Charmed. Leo put his hand on my shoulder and said, I have a message for you, take courage. Be at peace. This did much to calm me. I thanked Leo and he soon departed. Dean asked, what's with him being all sparkly when he comes and goes? You don't do that. I said, would you like me to do that? God, no, sorry, gosh, no. Leo is a white lighter. His class uses a transportation mode known as orbing. They don't exist in our world. I only know because of Mairead's memories. But I believe they are adjacent to guardian angels. I get that. I've seen Charmed. But what is the sparkly glow? I stared at him. Did he think I knew everything about angels from every universe? Your guess is as good as mine. Seriously. I shrugged. He's not exactly my brother from another mother. More like my man in from another canon. It was Dean's turn to stare. Then he went to the other room and came back with his brother. Tell Sam what you just told me. The moment has passed. Dean told Sam what I had said himself, and Sam laughed. They should laugh more often. The next day, a little girl we know, the altar of a different host, cut her hand badly on some glass. She had not wanted me to heal her because she doesn't like to be touched by strangers. Dr. Chishia stitched it up. For her instead. He is from something called Alice in Borderlands, and hours passed before I suddenly remembered what my brother Raphael was up to during the Son's ministry on Earth. I told the girl that I could try to heal her without touching her. I got a large bowl and filled it with water. We sat across a table from each other and I put my hand into the bowl. The water swirled and rippled. I told her it was ready and she put her uninjured hand into the water. Raphael healed many humans this way at a place called Bethesda, albeit with a lot more water. I can't convey how earnestly I prayed in that moment. I knew it might not work because although her father is an altar of our same host, the girl belonged to a different host, one who does not have faith in God. Not only that, but I'm not in my proper universe. I didn't know if I was praying to my father or the version of him in Mairead's world. It was as much for the host Sake as the child's that I wanted to heal her. God honored my fervency. The cut on her other hand healed almost completely, ready to have the stitches removed. When her father prompted her, she said, "Thank you, Mr. Castiel." I told her, "There's no need to thank me. You should thank my father." Quote, her father told me, "We'll thank him when we say prayers tonight." This feels like a victory, just as encouraging as the revelation of the masseuse. I am at peace once more. Dean, we should call this chapter, The Revelation of the Masseuse. Castiel. That doesn't make sense. This chapter was less about the masseuse than the last one. Dean. It's just a great title. Castiel. We're not calling it that. Sam. I knew what Dean was up to, trying to make our driving seem like a fun road trip or something. As far as he was concerned, things were almost back to normal. We just needed Dad back and we'd be one happy family again. Except we weren't really a happy family before. So, while I wanted to find Dad, part of me dreaded it. And the nightmares I kept seeing Jess on the ceiling. Bleeding. Burning. Why did that have to happen? Why did I have to keep seeing it? I knew I had seen it before it happened, too. That made me feel so guilty. Was that why I had the nightmares? I dreaded Dean finding out. What if I mentioned it in my sleep? When I wasn't dreaming about Jess, I was dreaming about fights with Dad, Dean dying protecting me. Or just some really creepy ass thing in the dark. Clowns were the worst. If I never have another clown dream, it will be too soon. Anyway, it was a very dark time for me. I was feeling loss very deeply. Not just the loss of Jessica, but the loss of my dream of graduating from law school and having a normal, productive life. And I couldn't talk to Dean about that, because he didn't want me to have a normal life. He wanted me to be a hunter. Well, hunting with Dean wasn't so bad without Dad. So, when another case came up, I didn't fight about it. Barely argued. Helping Peep. Lo was the one thing that might make me feel better. Castiel. Writing is more therapeutic than I expected. Currently, my main concern is that in spite of the deep conversations I've had lately with Dean, he still won't commit to trusting God. I thought some demonic influence might be sabotaging him, or that he might still be afraid to trust a father figure, or perhaps he was worried that God was just like the one in the supernatural show, and wouldn't be any use to him. But when I looked him in the eye yesterday, I saw that it was mostly guilt holding him back. You can't accept salvation because you think you don't deserve it. Saws I don't deserve it. He was sitting on the floor, trying to escape my gaze behind the knees and arms in front of him. I put my hand out without a thought and tilted his chin up. Dean, no one deserves it. It's a gift. I know at that moment he was trying to decide whether to bat my hand away, say something sarcastic about the caress, or ignore it and continue the uncomfortable conversation. I'm a little surprised with his choice. But why would he want to give it to me? It's available to everyone. He knows you by name, but you're not so special. If you didn't exist, salvation would still be on offer. I get that honestly. I don't know why I can't get past this. I just can't. Not yet, anyway. I know you're behind God 100%, but you have to admit you're biased. I don't know the guy. I knelt in front of him. Let me tell you more. Study his word. You will know him. Not now. Not yet. Please, Saws. His eyes had that shine that told me his emotions were extremely high. Dean doesn't like showing that. He likes to bury his feelings. I don't tend to feel things like the humans do, but I know how important my father made such things for them. I decided that for now I would have to retreat, before I pushed him too far. It filled me with sorrow for him. I stood. All right, there's still time. But please, don't wait too long. It's not that Dean is going to die soon. I am not in possession of that knowledge. But today is the day of salvation, and with all the things Dean goes through constantly, he can't take one day for granted. I have known souls to put off making things right with God until it truly is too late. How many times can you get rejected before you stop pursuing? I know God calls the lost many times before he gives them up. He would have them all as his children. We angels marvel at how highly he values each one, and how patient he is, one rejection after another. Dean seems so close to true faith. His rejections are not harsh or arrogant. But he has fears, and he doesn't understand that perfect love casts out fear. Oh my Father, how I wish I could help him. Blank, _ blank. W. Winchester Confidential. 3 dead in the water. Sam speaking. This was a weird case, definitely something I'd never heard of before. And it was my first good chance to see Dean interacting with a young kid that wasn't me, without Dad around. On first meeting, you wouldn't think Dean had much potential as a family man. But he was so good with Lucas, so patient. I guess I expected him to do something horrible like get in his face and say, "All right, kid. Cut the crap, I know you can talk. Tell me what you know or I snap all your crayons in half." But there was nothing even close to that. Dean just talked to him, accepted that he couldn't answer, and traded crayon drawings with him. I didn't say so, but I was impressed. And then Lucas really trusted us after that, and he gave us the clues we need. To figure out what, or who, was really causing all the drownings. By the time we left, we had saved his life and he was talking again. It sucked that there had been so many victims to this ghost, but it still felt like a win in the end. But then again, we still hadn't heard from Dad. The more time passed, the more pissed off I got. It was an old, familiar irritation because Dad had always kept me at arm's length. He didn't tell me about the monsters. I had to figure that out myself and get confirmation from Dean. Then he kept me to the research side of things, even though he had trained me to fight. Then when he did give me field experience, I still played second fiddle to Dean. Dean says it was because I was the favorite, but it sure didn't feel like it. Still feels like bull, to be honest, but I don't know. Then he told me not to come back when I left for college. It seemed like he just never wanted me around. Maybe it was because he knew there was something wrong with me. Dean was not. It's because he wanted to protect his precious baby. Sam. Don't bother, Dean. Even if you're right, it wouldn't have killed him to tell me his reasons. But we didn't talk. Not real conversations. You got those. Because you were his little man. Me, I was the innocent kid who wouldn't understand the talk of hunters like you. Dean. Oh, cry me a river. Stop being a pansy. By the way, did you read Cass's section? Sam. Not yet. Why? Dean. Don't read it. Sam. Again, why? Dean. I said not to. Sam. I'm sorry, are you God now? Castiel. You know how I dislike quips such as that. Dean. Saws, tell him not to read your section. Castiel. I don't wish to be a bone of contention between you. I'll just erase it. Sam. No, don't. If it means that much to you, Dean, I won't read it. But you have to stop calling me a pansy. Dean. Fine, I won't call you a pansy anymore. Today. Sam. This was supposed to be my section. Now you've made it look like a script. Go away. Where was I? Dad. We went from one town to another. Looking for another job while waiting for a lead on Dad, or better yet, contact from him. I was having a lot of trouble sleeping. Dean always seemed to get to sleep so easily, and he usually got up before me. I have to admit, I wasn't coping very well with the lifestyle. Blank, _ blank. Winchester Confidential. For Phantom Traveler. Dean here. Sam isn't kidding when he says he had trouble sleeping. He barely slept at all. I got nightmares off and on, but I'd almost gotten used to them. Like, if I dream I cut off a vampire's head and it keeps talking to me, I realize it's a dream, wake up. Hit the bathroom, go back to bed. If I see Mom burning, I know right away it's a dream, make myself close my eyes, take a deep breath, and I'm sitting up in some motel bed in a cold sweat. Mind you, these dreams had gotten fewer and farther between. I get adrenaline spikes so often, my body must have some instant recalibration system by now. Our next case was one of my least favorite. I hate airplanes. I mean, the military ones are kind of cool, but that doesn't mean I want to be up in one. I believe if I were meant to fly, I'd have been born an angel. And I'm no angel. I'll tell you something our canon got really wrong in this episode. 2. Actually. First, Sam reminds me that the Latin word for God is Christo. That's wrong. I may not be the Latin scholar that Sam is. But I know that Christo means Christ. And Christ means Messiah. Sure, a demon might not like it when you mention that, but Jesus would be more effective, and Deus even more so. Deus is he word I would have used to test a person for a reaction. But according to Saws, even mentioning God in English can rattle them if you have enough faith. I guess saying it in Latin does something for us. Maybe it's all the Exorcist movies or something. I kind of want to try doing an exorcism in English, now that I've been told I don't need the magic feather to fly, but part of me still wants to hang on to it. Guess my faith isn't very strong. And speaking of flying, the other weird thing brought up on that plane was the exorcism itself, how it will banish the demon, but first it will make it more powerful. Apparently that's hogwash too. Saws told me the demons don't get more powerful when you read off the exorcism, they just get more desperate and start throwing everything they've got at you. So, they're using more power. But they're not more powerful than before. I don't know why exorcisms or holy water work for people who don't believe in God. I mean, what makes the holy water holy? Or, is it just some white magic spell to them? Castiel. There are 2 reasons it works. First, because God's word does not return to him void. Basically, if you do something in God's name expecting it to work, he's honor bound to himself to take action. Secondly, the demons have gotten bolder and bolder, creating all sorts of monsters and corrupt men to work on winning Lucifer's wager. God decided to give you something to even the odds around the time the first vampires showed up. Before that, Holy water and Latin chants did nothing for anyone who didn't believe in him. Dean. That explains that. It's kind of funny. In our early days here I was talking to Sam and said something like, I've got a lot of questions for that Castiel bastard once we meet him. Sam said, how do you know he's a bastard if you haven't met him yet? I said, his name is Castiel. I wish I had been more help to Sam on this case. I'm not sure how I got so scared of planes. It's not as dangerous as space travel, but still pretty high up there, no pun intended. Still, I like to think Canon made me look a little more cowardly than I was. I mean, I went on the flight, didn't I? I faced my fear, at least. While I'm pointing things out, let's address another one. If a salt line gets broken, even a little bit, a ghost can get through. Same with a demon trap. So why does shooting rock salt at them work? It's not a solid barrier. I'd expect it to hurt, but not blow them away, even temporarily. Well, that's another rule. Canon got a little off. A broken salt line still works. The gap has to be completely clear, and wider than a crack. I'm not sure why, but ghosts have different spatial rules from physical monsters. They can go through walls, but a solid chunk or line of salt seems to repel them, and they hate being surrounded by it. So they won't enter even a half circle of salt unless it's really worth it to them. As for the demon trap, that's a little different. It doesn't have to be perfect. It can be a little wonky, like someone's bad handwriting is still readable. But if it's broken, that negates it completely, because the symbol is incorrect. Like if you erase the lower hump of AB, it becomes a P. Now the symbol is meaningless as far as binding the demon goes. Demons don't like salt either, but it doesn't faze them if they're not in physical form. They have to worry about it when they're possessing someone, which is when they become vulnerable to us humans. The show has them appear like black smoke when they're not in a body, but the truth is, we rarely catch a break like that. Usually they're invisible. There could be one reading this over my shoulder right now and I'd never know it. Castiel. There is not. Dean. Well, I'd never know it if I didn't have an angel reading this over my shoulder. Yesterday. Dean. Well, crap. Saws discovered. Angel. Sam. The Buffy the Vampire Slayer spin-off. Dean. No, the Sarah McLachlan song. Sam. Oh. Dean. Exactly. He thinks it sounds a lot like us, and I can't deny. The dark cold hotel room sounds like our usual surroundings, and we sure do stumble into those rooms bone-weary and looking for some peace, and we do know an angel I don't walk. NT to be the one to break it to him that the angel is a metaphor for drugs. Sam. Don't look at me. Dean. But it doesn't have to be, right? I mean, the ASPCA or whatever uses it in their ads all the time. It's open to interpretation. I just have to be careful. Sam. Definitely. Dean. The hole in the arms of the angel that might make him think he gets hugs. Sam. Can't have that. Dean. Freakin' minefield. Blank, underscore, blank. Winchester Confidential. 5 Bloody Mary. Several years ago. Dean. This case was weird. A lot of urban myths get you nowhere, and this is one that I always thought was baseless, or close to. Bloody Mary doesn't just appear because you say her name, but apparently because you have a guilty secret. Or, she used to, because Sam and I took care of it. It has to be the guilty person who says the name, though. It wasn't the death of Stephen Shoemaker that took us to Toledo. It was Lex, a teenage boy who crashed the girls' slumber party there. He was the Jackass who decided he was brave enough to say the name to the mirror, and as it turned out, he had forced a kiss on Charlie Shoemaker's friend Jill a few days earlier. That was his guilty secret. Jill refused to believe Charlie's fears of Bloody Mary were legit, that it was something else, maybe karma, that caught up with Lex. We managed to save Charlie, but I was left wondering what Sam's secret was. I know now, of course. But at that point he was acting all squirrely. There was no doubt in my mind that Jessica's death was not Sam's fault in any way. She was obviously killed by the same thing that killed our mom. Why? I had no idea. But why should Sam feel guilty for that? Still, if Sam didn't want to tell me, who was I to pry? I hated it when he tried to get me to tell him things. So I let it go for the time being. But he was having nightmares almost every time he closed his eyes. I forgot to mention in the last post. After that thing with the airplane was when Sam and I found out Dad changed his voicemail. That told me a couple of things. First, Dad didn't want us to find him. Did he know we were actively looking? I don't know. But second, he was alive. Hadn't been killed by the lady in white or whatever else he was hunting lately, because his voicemail message changed very recently. Third, since he was giving people my cell number, that meant he definitely wanted me to keep hunting and helping people out while he was busy with whatever sent him off grid. I could tell Sam was pretty unhappy about this development, and I wasn't thrilled either, but I was glad to know Dad was alive. I realized I had been pretty worried about him, and I had to look at it as a positive. __. Winchester Confidential. 6 Skin. Sam. In this episode, the writ-ers of our canon went off from our memories a bit. We decided to look into Zach Miller's case because it looked interesting, not because I knew his sister. We ended up staying at Becky Warren's house, but she wasn't Zach's sister. She didn't even know him. It was just convenient to stay with people I knew so we wouldn't have to pay for a motel. But I guess they wanted to up the stakes and the drama in the show. So they made them siblings. Let me just say, I can't stand shapeshifters. They may not be able to help what they are, but they're just the worst. As with the sibling thing, the writers made the whole plot convoluted. Having me, Dean and Becky all getting captured at one time or another. Thank God, Becky never actually saw the thing. It did impersonate Dean at one point, but it didn't fool me for long. The important thing about that case was how we cleared Zach. Before the shifter learned who was after him, we managed to figure out who he was targeting next. I won't get into all of the details on that. It doesn't really matter. But by placing ourselves where we knew the shifter was likely to show up, we could plant false information. We posed as cops who had nothing to do but talk about the Zach Miller case. We managed to convince him that Zach was being released in an attempt to get him to go back to the scene of the crime and incriminate himself. The shifter couldn't resist turning into Zach one more time, and he sure did go back to the scene of the crime. We got video of him there and took it to the real police. They of course had not really released Zach, so seeing a guy who looked just like him at the scene of the crime made it clear that they couldn't prove they had the right guy. They had to drop the charges. Dean and I had a run-in with the shifter afterwards. It's not surprising that he wanted revenge on us for setting him up. And we wanted to kill him, so we got split up. It doppelganger Dean almost killed me. Dean caught up, we killed it together. Becky still doesn't know the supernatural side of the story. She just thinks we're badass amateur detectives. It's better that way. Also way better that Dean was never a suspect in any murders there. These writers really like to sensationalize our lives, as if they're not crazy enough. __. Last night, Sam. Okay, so obviously the first verse is about how tough the human life is. And how hard people can be on themselves. They feel like failures when things aren't going well. So, sometimes they just want deus ex machina. They want some unexpected hero to swoop in and fix things. Or at least relieve the pressure. Castiel. So, the angel is a hero. Dean. It's more of a metaphor, it's not a literal angel. It's whatever makes you feel better or takes the pain away. Castiel. Suspicious. Is this about sex? Dean. Oddly enough not necessarily, but I guess it could be. There's that line about beautiful release. Sam. Grimacing. But anyway, the second verse. He talks about external adversity. Anything from a lousy day at work to demons coming after you. People lie to themselves to try to feel better, and then they give into whatever vice or coping mechanism that can get them through the night. Castiel. Ergo the desire to fly away in the arms of an angel. Dean. Pretty much. Castiel. It's very mournful. Sam. Yeah, Castiel. It makes me think maybe it's about death. Maybe they don't want to make it through the night. Dean and Sam exchange glances. Dean. Well, that could be the case too. Songs are sometimes vague on purpose, so it can mean different things to different people. Silence. Dean. Conted, you okay, buddy? Castiel. I'm fine. I just want to contemplate this some more. Pushes play on YouTube lyric video again. Dean. Sighing. Saws you want a hug. Castiel. Looks at Dean blankly. I am indifferent. Dean, relieved. Okay. Well, you do your thing. I'm going to bed. Sam. Good night, Saws. Pats Castiel's shoulder on the way past. Exit Sam and Dean. Castiel begins humming with the song as it plays. Blank, underscore, blank. Written this morning. Winchester Confidential. 7 Hook Man. Dean. This one just didn't happen. It's AF. Iller episode to replace 1 or 2 of the more routine cases Sam and I had. They drew on the urban legend of the hook-handed murderer, but that's just a ghost story told around campfires. Sam did research it at one point, but it has no valid foundation. There was a college chick named Lori, whose boyfriend got offed by a ghost, and we helped her get rid of it, but that's where the similarity ends. Oh, and Sam did kind of take a shine to her, but nothing came of it. We were still looking for Dad. In spite of the fact that he seemed not to want to be found, he was still depressed about Jess, so we just kept moving. Winchester Confidential. 8 Bugs. Sam. This is the first episode where the show starts its running joke of Dean and I getting mistaken for a gay couple. Sure, it's happened once or twice, but they just turned it into a whole fan service gag. When it does happen, Dean doesn't play along. He usually says something like, I realize there's not much family resemblance between me and this Neanderthal. But we happen to be brothers. The only way he would play along is if it made things much easier for investigation, and usually it doesn't. The whole bug thing got exaggerated by the writers. And so did the subplot of Dean and I trying to tell Matt Pike what he should do with his life. There was a Native American curse on the property, but it wasn't a neighborhood-wide, everybody dies kind of curse. Not saying it was easy to figure out or solve, but I swear this show tries to turn each episode into a full-blown horror movie. Matt was 12, not 16. Dean and I have had a few discussions about our upbringing. I think the writers just put Matt at that age to give us an excuse to discuss Dad while we were working the case. It's true, I felt like Dad was very overbearing, and that he favored Dean as the good son, because he was always up for whatever Dad wanted him to do. Guns, bows and arrows, knife work, whatever. Anything Dad would teach him, Dean was down for it. So, Dad liked him better. Dean. Oh, shut up. I was easier to work with, but that doesn't mean he liked me better. Sam. I was about to say. Dean has never shared that perspective. He thinks Dad was tug on me because he was afraid of losing me and because he was afraid if I didn't learn the same skills as Dean, I'd be vulnerable to attack. Maybe he was right, but I sure didn't feel like love was his motivation. He could have handled things better. A lot better. And he probably could have been better to Dean, too. Let him relax now and then. At the end of the day, all parents mess their kids up to some extent. I'm sure Dad was doing the best he thought he could. God knows it wasn't an easy life for him. And I wish I'd done things different, too. I still wanted to find him, not just to make sure he was all right, but also to mend fences with him. Castiel. Sam, do you want a hug? Sam. I'm indifferent. Castiel. Nodding. Let me know if you change your mind. Castiel puts in earbuds. Sam. Too. Dean. Is he still listening to that song? Dean. Yup. Sam. Does he have it on loop? Dean. Yup. Sam. I get why you gave him your earbuds. Dean. Yup. At least I gave him the example of asking before hugging. Sam. Yeah, good call. Dean. Saws found a couple of fan-made music videos with clips from our canon and that song. And now he's spoiled some details from episodes we hadn't seen yet. Way to go, Charcoal Wings. Castiel. I said I was sorry. Dean. You don't look sorry. Castiel. It's just that there's a silver lining. Dean. How? Castiel. Fighting a smile. It seems you're going to be a little more open to hugs in the future. Dean. Pointing into the distance. Get out. Blank, underscore, blank. Winchester Confidential. 9 Home. Sam. This one is part of our personal history, not just our canon. It's the first time we took a case based on one of my premonitions. I regretted telling Dean about them, but he needed to know. Maybe he did look at me differently after that, he should. The was something wrong with me from 6 months old. It was also on this case that I learned it was Dean who carried me out of the burning house while Dad stayed back to fight or try to save Mom, neither of which would do any good. He had no real hunter experience at that point. And if he'd had time to think it through, he would have recognized that Mom would want him to make sure he lived so we wouldn't be orphans. But I still think it was brave of him to send us out ahead. And it showed that he loved my mom. Dean wasn't eager to take this case, but I persuaded him eventually. I'm glad we went. We met Missouri Mosley, and even though the show has her just in this one episode, as far as we've seen, anyway, we contacted her many other times over the years. She's great. Fantastic. I think T.S. is the first episode where Dean hugs me, since I know there are people who like to keep track of those things. The poltergeist nearly strangled me to death with lamp cord and Dean saved me. He PPED the cord, and then I guess his instincts overrode his need to preserve his macho image. He hadn't hugged me in years, but near-death experience and all. Of course, he acted like it never happened as soon as we left that room. You would think he would go for a hug after we saw and spoke to Mom's ghost, but I guess he had a better handle on himself then, or maybe he couldn't bring himself to talk about it. And hugging might need a word of explanation. Or maybe he was afraid he'd break if he didn't keep it all in. Fair enough. I was really emotional too. The show didn't begin to convey how much this case shook us up. But it also gave us a little closure. Dean. There were upsides to this case, but it was kind of gut-wrenching too. Sammy didn't remember living in that house. But I did. It brought up so many memories, even though the place had changed. At one point, I called Dad's phone and left a pretty pitiful message begging him to come out of the woodwork. It really felt like a personal, family matter kind of case. But I got no answer. I don't know if canon is accurate and Dad was nearby the whole time. Seems like a dick move. Sorry, Saws. A lousy move. Anyway, I kind of doubt it. Seems like something they would add just to up the angst. Missouri Mosley had a gift for dealing with poltergeists, and she had nerves of steel. Seeing Mom's ghost, though it was weird. To think she was in that house for years watching over whoever was there. How did she last so long without turning bitter and lashing out? It's very unusual. And poor Sam. He'd seen several pictures of Mom, but seeing her in person, if not in the flesh, was really intense for him. I know he wanted to hold on to her and talk and make up for lost time, but she didn't have the time to give him. She managed to take that poltergeist out with her somehow. Lemme ask the resident angel how that works. Castiel. I don't know exactly how it happened, since I wasn't observing. I'm guessing your mother avoided her reaper or just refused to go with him. Being from a hunter family, she surely knew what would happen to her, and since another ghost had taken up residence there, she could see firsthand exactly how things might go if she ever gave into anger. She must have held on to something else, perhaps a desire to see you grown up, or just the wish to help someone. In the end, when she ordered the poltergeist out, I assume she used all the spiritual skill and power she gathered in the years in that house to hold him in her grasp and take him to the reapers. Once a ghost has become that belligerent, it is incapable of accepting or rejecting its reaper. It is reaped by default. But catching it is rather difficult because it spreads itself so thin and loss. He's out with so much rage-generated power. Sometimes they even possess humans. Your mother was undoubtedly instrumental in its removal. Dean. With a mom and dad that brave, I'm just a natural-born hero. Castiel. Being a successful hunter is far more about nurture than nature. Dean. Whatever. Winchester Confidential. 10 Asylum. Still Dean, I wish I could say this one was all cinematic writing. But those old asylums do harbor ghosts from time to time. The plot is familiar, but not exact. Sanford Ellicott didn't have a son that I recall. We got the story about him from someone else. I don't remember Kat and Gavin either. I think they were added for comic relief and so we would have someone to explain things to for the benefit of the viewers. This is why a book series would actually be great. Because you don't have to put your exposition into unrealistic conversations. Okay, I just learned that there is a book series, but it's not the show in book form. It's honestly glorified fan fiction, just licensed for capitalism. 17 books by various authors. The Winchester Gospel, it is not. But they could still be a good read. Let's be honest, Chuck wasn't a great writer. Anyway, back to the episode. Yes, the ghost messed with Sam and me, tested our trust, brought out our frustrations, but we got through it. And then we got a phone call from Dad. And all hell broke loose. Figuratively speaking, of course. Blank, underscore, blank. Winchester Confidential. 11 Scarecrow. Sam here. Dean's right, Dad's phone call got us arguing again. I wanted to refuse to do a damn thing Dad said until he told us where he was. He had a lead on our mom's killer and he wouldn't let us help him. That was bull, but Dean wanted to follow protocol. And take Dad's orders like a good soldier and take the case he gave us. So, we headed to Burkittsville, Indiana, but partway there, I had Dean let me out. I already felt like I had been yanked back into the hunter life. I wasn't going to let Dad and Dean decide everything for me again. I was a grown man, after all. Dean. PSH, you were what, 21? 22. Sam. Shut up. I started hitchhiking and that's when I met Meg. But I had no clue who she was at the time. She seemed like a pretty normal girl. Knowing now that she was reeling me in like a fish is pretty embarrassing. Well, even though we had gone our separate ways, I still tried to help Dean with his case long distance. Some of my stress went away when he told me he admired my standing up to Dad. So, at least he wasn't mad at me for it. When he stopped answering his phone, I decided I had to go back and help him. Meg tried to stop me. At the time, I just figured she had a crush on me and didn't want to lose contact. Now I know she was hoping Dean would get killed, making me easier to manipulate. Thank God I didn't listen to her. The townspeople were pretty desperate to find a new sacrifice after Dean foiled their plans, but Emily wasn't the Jorgensen's niece. She was an outsider employed at the cafe. And Sauce told us later that the god they were sacrificing to was actually a demon, a fallen angel. We figure the town had planned to sacrifice Emily all along, but let her live there for a couple of years because she was likable and fit in. So, sacrificing her wasn't as dramatic a betrayal as the TV show made it. It was more like falling back on Plan A. I got back in time to help save the town. We torched the tree in the night, less than an hour after the town tried to sacrifice Dean and Emily, and even though it was clear that it would just be a normal town after that, there wasn't nearly as much carnage as our canon suggested. Seriously, if these things went nuclear every week, the supernatural would never go unnoticed by ordinary people. Dean and I mended our fences after that. He had managed without me for a long time, but now I was worried. Who knows what would have happened if I hadn't gone back. So, we were back to seeing this thing through together, even if it meant following irritating instructions from Dad. We'd catch up with him eventually and sort things out. Blank, underscore, blank. Dean. All right, Sammy. You can't read this section. Sam. Why not? Dean. It's not some big life secret or something, it's just kind of embarrassing. Saws already knows about it, so there's no point in telling him not to read it. But I'd rather you didn't know all the sordid details. Sam. Sordid. Dean. I'm exaggerating. Tell him. Saws. I mean, don't tell him, but you know. Castiel. I understand why Dean wouldn't want you to read about his struggles with Reformation. Sam. Raising an eyebrow. Okay, but you're posting this online. Dean. Why the heck not? These people think we're fictional anyway. It's not like it can be worse than Sam/Dean. Sam. Fair point. Fine. I won't read it. See you in the next one. Blank. Underscore, blank. Dean. So, the other night, I was jonesing hard. You see, Saws has me trying to reform. When I got back from hell, I was shook. I'm still not sure exactly how close that part of my canon is to my past, but even a little close is plenty bad. It kind of put the fear of God in me, so to speak. I had these magazines I asked Maraid's alter Shoto, kid can use ice or fire pretty much at will, to burn them for me. Sam was shocked. When I said I didn't want them anymore, he thought I was joking. Didn't believe it until he saw them go up in flames, and I had a big smile on my face. It felt really freeing. Then Sam said he bet I couldn't stop cursing. And that started this competition between us. It was going to be, who can curse the least in a work day, but it turned into, who can curse the least through the end of the work week. It lasted about 3 days. By the end, Sam won 12-5, and he wasn't even trying hard. But afterward, I actually kept it up pretty well. I'm cursing much less often, catching myself a lot more. I haven't even had alcohol in weeks. That one is getting a little hard, but I'm managing. But then, like I said, the other night, man, I got hit bad. I wanted to go out and find a lady to spend some time with. But no, that would be a huge step backward. I fought it most of the evening. But little by little, I knew the demon on my shoulder was winning over the angel. It wasn't a question of whether I would give in, but when I would give in. So, getting toward bedtime, when Saz came into my room and saw me using the computer on my bed, I shouldn't have been surprised when he asked, "Are you looking at porn?" "No," I answered automatically. "Are you lying to me?" I glanced to the side. "If it's anime, it doesn't count, right?" Dean. Him saying my name like that, man, it made me feel ashamed, if only for letting him down. "I'm sorry, Saz. I tried to fight it, but I lost. It's not too late. Look, I'm not going out and finding some slut at a bar. I'm staying right here, just me and some imaginary chick in a little black dress that she must have been poured into in liquid form, and it'll be over in 15 minutes. Half an hour, tops. I know it's not good, but it won't hurt anyone. Just you. Screw him. Why's he got to be so dramatic? But also, why's he got to be right? You said yourself that even if I went down the straight and narrow, I'd have setbacks. I'd mess up now and then. This is just one of those times." He took a step closer to me. "This is so bad for you." "Come on," I scoffed. But I knew it was bad for me. I just didn't want him to know. Or at least, I didn't want him to know that I knew. Some people say it's actually good for you. Good like cardio. It's bad for your soul. I knew that was what he meant, but why'd he have to say it out loud? But nothing's too bad to be forgiven, right? What shall we say then? Shall we continue in sin, that grace may abound? God forbid. Something about the way he said this told me that he was quoting the Bible. Well, how is a guy supposed to argue against the Bible? God's word. The God whose path I'm trying to follow, because Saz insists that the God of our world is not like the God in Supernatural. I told you, I'm sorry, but this is happening. So, get out. He looked kind of hurt, and I figured he'd maybe shake his head sadly or say something that would gut me and then leave me to my debauchery, but he stepped even closer. Close enough that he could have shut my laptop if he decided to. No, any closer and he'd be able to see that my body was very ready for what my lust had planned. "Oh, okay then, I'll just do it right in front of you. Is that what you want?" I was bluffing, of course. I expected him to recoil, but his eyes just somehow got even sadder. I felt like crap. He seemed to gather himself. And he took another step closer, close enough to touch me now, definitely able to see everything. "If you're determined to do this, then you'll have to do it in front of me, because I'm not leaving." Like I said, I was bluffing. And now it seemed that my bluff had backfired. Much as I was sure he didn't want to see me debase myself, I wanted him to see it even less. "Damn it, Saz." He blinked. But that was the only sign that my cursing might have hurt him any further. "I'm telling you, I'm not strong enough." "Then lean on me." He gripped my shoulder, just about overlaying the scar he put on me. Don't touch me right now." It's weird. It was. I mean, I had a full-blown you-know-what, and my guy friend was grabbing me. Weird. God won't allow you to be tested above your ability to resist. You sure about that? I'm not a Christian yet. And when you are, he will never leave you. All of your sins will be right in front of him. He is the friend who sticks closer than a brother. You can't push him out of the room or find anywhere to hide. I'm not sure I like that. But Dean, he sounded a little exasperated. He can already see you. He sees you at your worst and loves you anyway. And he'll forgive you, every time, even though you don't deserve it. He'll have to forgive me in the morning. Both hands on the shoulders now. Face way too close to mine. You understand he died for you. He was innocent, perfect, sinless, and no sacrifice from you would ever make up for sinning against him. But his sacrifice was so great that no sin you commit can ever negate what he did for you. Do you understand? And you want to do this? I was tongue-tied. He was manipulating me and I hated that. I also hated that he had a very valid point under his manipulation. My voice sounded pitiful when I choked out. I'm sorry, Saws. Please, stop trying. I can't fight it anymore. I'll confess it after, I promise. Just go. Give it up. I will never give up on you. He pulled me into his arms, making the laptop slide half off my legs and onto the bed. For like a millisecond, I fought it, but then I put my head on his shoulder and cried. At this point, even if he had given up, I wouldn't be able to get any pleasure out of my actions. I'd just hate myself. I was still smoldering, but I thought I could manage it now. Barely. Okay. You win, I got out between breaths. I gled a little to get a hand clear of him and navigated away from the website on the topsy-turvy laptop. Then I closed the screen. The inspiration was shut down, but my body wasn't yet, and I worried I might still slide down that slippery slope into the pit of my own defilement. Cass's grip didn't make things worse, it steadied me. I let my arms go around him, hands resting somewhere around the wing attachment point. Or so I imagined. I couldn't feel his wings and held on like he was the only thing keeping me above water. Don't leave. I won't. If you go, I might give in. Never mind keeping me above water. I felt like he was all that was keeping me out of hell. I won't leave. His voice was full of something compassion, I guess. But it was steady, grounding. Neither of us said anything for a minute. Then he started humming quietly. It was that song, "Oh God, I'm in the arms of the angel." But honestly, I did find comfort there. I knew it was going to be okay. I knew that I still had to confess my sin, cursing. Being so cutting to my friend who was just trying to help me, looking at that crap online, coming so close to jacking off, but for now I was just going to stay right where I was and listen to Saws hum that stupid song. Dean. Saws has me confessing my sins. He says it's good for me to get into these habits for when I'm a true believer, or whatever. Like a fake it till you make it strategy. If it keeps me out of hell, sure. Why not? I'll play along, for now at least. And maybe I'll really get it one of these days. But anyway, he says since I'm not an actual Christian yet, God won't really forgive me. So I'm like, that's nice, why am I doing this again? The things I do for my friend. He did tell me something kind of cool, though. Apparently if he says, "Amen," to my prayer, it'll get heard. But he won't do that for me unless I let him hear the whole prayer, probably because he knows I'd be tempted to put something sarcastic or inappropriate into it. So, after the thing I told you about last time, Saws got down on the floor with me. He says I don't have to bow or kneel, but that it will help my frame of mind if I do, and on this occasion I really felt ashamed. So it did seem like the right thing to do and listen to my prayer. He kept a hand on my shoulder the whole time, and it was like I could feel the sympathy soaking through my shirt. I really meant that prayer, actually. I felt like a mess and I was sorry, especially for being a jerk. I also thanked God for Saws and put in a request that he not have to leave suddenly and not come back, though I didn't ask it in those exact words. I definitely won't continue this journey if he disappears on me, and I feel like it's important. He's turning into my conscience. Blank, _ blank. Winchester Confidential. 12 Faith. Still Dean. I don't remember the exact circumstances of my electrocution. Maybe it was like canon, maybe not. So much has happened since then, and all Sam A.N.D. I could think about at the time was that I might die, not how I came to have a heart attack at 26. Sam told me he tried calling Dad several times, and he was pissed off that Dad didn't answer his messages about what happened to me. Truth be told, I was kind of hurt too, but I tried to be stoic about it. If I was going to die, I didn't want the last Sam saw of me to be a meltdown. I don't really remember what lead got us to Nebraska, or who was at the tent meeting when we got there. I think Layla was made up because the show always has to have some hot chick for sexual tension and or angst. I am going to need Saws to explain what we found there. We weren't very seasoned hunters at the time, and I wasn't very enthusiastic about this whole trip, and Sam was green as heck. Castiel. The thing I find most puzzling about this episode is the Coptic cross. The Copts may not be mainstream Christians, but they certainly are not demon worshippers or dark magic users. Sue Ann used an inverted cross. Perhaps the writers just wanted to make things more interesting by adding variety, but if ever there was a case of cultural misappropriation, I think this would qualify. The Copts have been persecuted enough. Don't misrepresent them in fiction. Something else about our canon. The Reapers are angels, not whatever those mummified ghouls on the show are. They do tend to be a bit grim because their job can be unpleasant. But they aren't horrific monsters. Sue Ann had trapped an angel in her power, and when she realized his gift was not healing, she manipulated him into swapping deaths. His name is Ronanel, and he serves under Azrael. Dean, why do your names all end in L? Castiel. It means God. Ronanel means, the Lord makes new. Azrael means, help of God. Dean, what does your name mean? Castiel. The Lord's fortress. Dean, no way. Castiel. Also known as, the Lord's shield, or, my cover is God. Dean, my cover is FBI agent. Castiel, you're being flippant. Dean, sorry, please, go on. Castiel, anyway, because the Reaper was an angel, only something angelic, theologic, or demonic could bind him. Even if the Copts were the ones who discovered how to do it, they would hardly use the symbol of their faith in the ritual. What Dean saw when he was healed wasn't a withered old man. It was a troubled young man dressed in white. My little brother. Dean. To think, we were just 1 degree of separation apart. Even way back then. Castiel. Indeed, after you and Sam freed him was the first time I heard your names spoken in heaven. I was interested, but had no idea that we would ever meet, let alone become friends. I never really thanked you for saving Ronanel. Dean. Happy to help. To be honest, we didn't really know what we were doing. It just seemed like the right thing to do, or at least the less bad thing to do. Castiel. I am still grateful. I learned later that Ronanel was given the choice to revive the man who died in Dean's place and let Dean drop dead, or to leave things as they were. Because the other man's faith led him to heaven, and because he was grateful for being freed, Ronanel chose to leave Dean alive. Dean. Would I have gone to hell? Castiel. Yes. Dean. Well, don't sugarcoat it. Castiel. But it would have been the normal hell. Separation from God, darkness, eternal flames, undying worms, and endless regret. Dean. Sorry, did you say, undying worms? What the, blank, underscore, blank. Sam talking. We didn't know that the Reapers were angels, or the ripple effect that freeing one would have, but I knew Dean was better, and I felt extremely grateful and didn't know whom to thank. I had prayed before, quite a few times as a kid, and many since Jess died. But after this incident, I started praying every day. Something along the lines of, thank you that we're still here. Thank you for my brother. Please keep us safe. Dean told me that he really did tell one of the people looking for healing that he would pray for them, and that he really did, once. Dean. Felt weird. Decided it was a one-off. Sam. Yeah, so, other than gratitude, that little misadventure left me with another feeling, fury at Dad. Dean was dying and he never answered, much less came to help. It's hard not to still be angry about that, even though I know it's pointless. I've always had some anger issues, even though I'm supposed to be the mild-mannered one. Saz is helping me work on it. I was ready to take a break from looking for Dad, since I was so angry with him. We went to Missouri to help out an old friend of Dean's. Blank, underscore, blank. Winchester Confidential. 13 Route 666. This episode mostly played out how it happened in our timeline. I will note that when Cyrus burned the church, most of the kids' choir escaped. There were only 3 deaths, 2 kids, and the choir director who was trying to save them. Also, I found out exactly where the church property line was and told Dean how far he needed to go to lure the ghost onto hallowed ground. The phantom truck had to get completely onto the property for it to work. Dean said it skidded at the end, like it was trying to do a 180 and get off again, but it was too late. The Impala got showered in dirt. But after a car wash she looked like nothing happened. As for Dean's friend Cassie, he won't tell me exactly what happened between them, but I have little doubt that the episode was fairly accurate there, too. And from the way Castiel's probing stare is making Dean uncomfortable, I think that's a pretty sure thing. Blank, underscore, blank. Winchester Confidential. 14 Nightmare. At this point, I have to bring up the name Jim. James, Jim, Jimmy, all names these writers use way too often. First there was Pastor Jim Murphy, and in this episode, the first victim's name was Jim Miller. I don't know why they're obsessed with this name. It must be an inside joke. Castiel. James comes from Jacob, the supplanter. Sam. Even with that in mind, I don't know what the point is. Anyway, the real guy's name was Chris, not that it matters. We went to Michigan based on a premonition of mine, and Dean was not at all eager to go. I think he thought I was just having random nightmares, and I needed to forget about them and move on. Maybe he agreed to go just so he could prove that my visions weren't coming true. But he was wrong. We thought it was a family curse at first. But then some more visions helped us figure out it was Max, and I had my chat with him. After Max killed himself, I was able to stop being as angry at Dad. Sure, he didn't come to Hero when we were begging him for help, but after Mom died, he could have just married someone else and pretended to move on and gotten angry and taken it out on us like Max's father did. Instead, He tried to protect us while searching for the demon that took Mom away from us. I'm sure he thought it was the best he could do. So, I was less angry for a while after that. And I had found out that being frantic sometimes gave me telekinetic ability. I had rarely been as scared as when I had that vision of Dean getting killed. I managed to hug him before we got on the road again, though he protested. Just for a minute, I'd had a taste of how it would feel to lose him. I couldn't let that happen. And I had to hold on to him for a minute, just to assure myself that he was okay. Dean. Of course I was. Nothing too bad will happen. As long as we work together. Blank, _ blank. Winchester Confidential. 15 The Benders. Humans, man, I know TV, and I know movies, and Sam knows literature. We figured out a while ago that if a show runs long enough it will have certain things. A plague episode. A Godfather episode. A Santa Claus episode. A disaster episode. A Casablanca episode. A Shakespeare episode. A Rear Window episode. A High Noon Mag 7 episode. A The Most Dangerous Game episode. That last one is what this was. It seemed like our kind of thing at first, unexplained disappearances. A witness that saw someone get dragged under a car, but not what happened to him. And Dad had determined that there was something fishy there. That was plenty for me. And then Sam got abducted. Like, you didn't have a premonition about this. What good are they, Sam? I couldn't control them. And if they'd been ghosts or something, I would have been prepared. I didn't expect normal humans. Dean. Nothing about them was normal. While Sam was busy figuring out who was holding him, I was trying to figure out where and why. Kathleen must have thought I was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, but at least she worked with me. It's a good thing I can get out of most handcuffs easily, or Sam and I would all be toast. Of course, I didn't expect cute little Missy to be a willing participant in her family's crazy. If this had followed the plot of that short story, according to Sam, one of us would have been set free with a knife, gone through a lot of harrowing adventures, gradually inning bigger and bigger victories against the Benders before ultimately returning to free his brother and consider staying in that nuthouse to become the next human hunter there. Fortunately, I guess, that's not what happened in the episode, or our memories. We fought it out with the Benders. Kathleen shot Pa Bender, too good for him, in my opinion, and we left her to deal with the brass. Kathleen is a good egg. And yeah, I guess I also got a taste of what it was like to lose my brother and it pissed me off. I used to practice my knots by tying him up. We used to get in fights that always ended with me pinning him down. I insulted him every day of his life. But only I get to do those things. Everyone else can keep their dirty hands off him and keep his name out of their mouths. Sam. Possessive, much. Dean. Shut up, blank, _ blank. Sam. In recent weeks, Castiel has been trying hard to get us to study the Bible. The big push started when Saz was trying to be encouraging and patted Dean on the shoulder. Dean grumbled, right on the scar for a reason. Saz did this sarcastically innocent smile I don't think I'd ever seen on him before and said, "You would do well to remember that I pulled you from hell, and until you're fully redeemed, I can put you back." Dean was kind of stunned by this unusual attitude and just said, "Good talk." I said, "Hold on to. He means once he's fully redeemed, or whatever, he can't go to hell." Saws turned toward me, all slow and dramatic, saying, "I keep telling you to read the Bible." Whoa, touchy. Okay, I'm sorry. Vixen witnessed all this, and Saws turned to her next to say, "You see what I'm dealing with." She agreed with a, Vixen is a Christian, so she's very sympathetic to Saws. But this incident started me down a new path. Saws basically told us that the key to being hell-proof is in the Bible for anyone to find. I talked to Dean about it, and we agreed. We want to know. We want that full redemption. Neither of us wants to go to hell ever again. So, I asked Saws to help us, because we don't know where to start. He said, "Dean, you want to believe in God, but you don't understand redemption. You should start with the Gospels. And Sam, you've already studied the life of Christ, but you don't understand who God is. You should start in Genesis." And that night, we had our first session. Dean called it Bible Study with Saws. He'll probably come up with a sillier name for it later. Dean, Meeting of the God Squad. Bedside Baptist. Sam, hilarious. Dean, emotional devotional. Sam, raising an eyebrow but trying not to laugh. You done? Dean, for now. Dean, honestly, I'm getting a little pissed off. We've had several reviews and private messages about this story, all of them raving about it. All of them saying something like, "Here's my email, Discord. Contact me about your work so we can talk about turning it into a comic book, bringing it to life with art." They're all liars. Don't try to con a con man. Even if I couldn't smell the scam a mile away, I know that no one is reading this story. Know how I know? Because of the story properties, genius. It tells us how many people have read it, and it's a big fat 0. No one is reading this part here that I'm typing now, either. Because if they didn't read part 1, they sure as hell won't read part 8. But on the off chance that of you scammers makes it this far someday, you're not fooling anyone. But you are the reason we're probably going to move to AO3. I don't mind that no one's reading, but I hate the fact that people are lying about reading. So, Matthew. That's what they call the first book of the New Testament, aka the Gospel according to St. Matthew. Fun fact. Castiel says that everyone who's fully redeemed, or a true believer, they're all saints. In fact, that's what a saint is, a redeemed person. So, the Catholics have some explaining to do. And that means that Sammy and I aren't just looking to be believers. We're trying out for sainthood here. There's something I never thought I'd say. Matthew has something in common with Genesis, the book Saws had Sam start on. They both have a topic sentence. If you're like me and you glazed over in English class, you're about to glaze over. I'll make it simple for you. A topic sentence is like a headline. Deaths leave police baffled. Like that. Then you know you're going to read about some murders or suicides, or just mysterious deaths that the cops can't figure out. You know what's coming. So, in Matthew, the topic sentence is, the book of the generation of Jesus Christ, the son of David. The son of Abraham, which sounds normal, except that I remember from Sunday school at Pastor Jim's church that David's father's name was Jesse. So, what's going on here? Saws, Castiel. In ancient times, ancestors were called fathers and descendants were called sons. Jesus was the descendant of David, and David was the descendant of Abraham. Dean. Okay. So that cleared up. We launched into a list of names. This guy had this kid, who had this kid, who had this kid. Let's skip to the interesting part. Verse 17 says, "So all the generations from Abraham to David are 14 generations. And from David until the carrying away into Babylon are 14 generations, and from the carrying away into Babylon unto Christ are 14 generations." Interesting landmarks. Castiel. The number 7 is seen often in the concept of completion. When God uses double 7, or 14, it's perfection times 2. It took 14 generations of molding the Israelites from Abraham to David to get a king in pursuit of God's own heart. In another 14, Israel had turned away from God and been carried off into captivity in Babylon. So, God doubled perfection again. And took 14 generations to bring the second David. The second Adam. The king who would break the curse. Dean. Sounds pretty fancy when you put it like that. I like a good plan, but man, God is playing the long game. All your schemes are over in your lifetime. He has all the time in the world. Castiel. And then some. Blank, underscore, blank. Winchester Confidential. 16 Shadow. Sam. This is where I crossed paths with Meg again. I'm glad I was suspicious. It was too coincidental to run into her again. If I were a hopeless romantic, I might think it was fate, but after Jess, I'm kind of jaded. I'm not meant to be happy. We thought the shadows were some ancient evil, demon-adjacent entity, but Saws has some insight on that. Castiel. The divas were demons prevail. NT over 1,000 years before the birth of Christ. They were so active in Persia that a religion arose there just in opposition to them, Zoroastrianism. The religion focuses mainly on the concept of good versus evil, and if humans wished to prevail over the demons, they had to use their gift of free will to persistently choose good. The demons came to fear them and keep to the shadows, and this particular group of demons stayed in the same area for thousands of years, honing their shadow-lurking skills while avoiding the Zoroastrians. Meg got in touch with them, but they were a proud and predictable bunch that didn't appreciate the way she treated them. Given the chance, they turned on her, badly damaging her vessel. Sam. So, everything happened to us very similarly to canon up to that point. Then the show decided to give us a dramatic second showdown with Meg. She wasn't actually there. We don't know what made the divas come back for us, maybe a higher-up demon in the region made a new deal with them. But anyway, after we left Meg's location, Dean got a call from Dad. We were both shocked that he was finally talking to us again in real time. Dad said he was in the area. He had come to help us. But now that he knew we were okay, he said it would be better if he left again. Dean and I were both against that. Since he was so nearby, we wanted to see him before he split again. I hadn't seen him in over 2 years. And I know Dean was feeling the separation worse than I was. So, Dad agreed to meet us at our hotel room, but he said it should be a brief meeting. Then, similar to canon, we had a little family reunion. Got hugs, had a little argument, and almost got killed by shadow demons. That's what made Dean agree with Dad, that he shouldn't stay with us, even though Dean wanted us all together more than anything. We were too easy to find all together, especially when we didn't know how to work together anymore. And Dad was insistent that he needed to track the demon that killed Mom by himself. Which Dean and I thought was bull. But anyway, we ended up splitting up again. Blank, underscore, blank. Winchester Confidential. 17 Hell House. Dean. He prank war between me and Sam didn't directly coincide with this case, but it was real. And there have been many others like it. Saws says the tulpa is more like a ghost than a demon, but instead of being the lingering soul of a human, it is the focused belief of a group of people. Castiel. Ultimately, a tulpa isn't even a real entity itself. Your own belief in it allowed it to hurt you. And you could have weakened it significantly just by removing the Tibetan spirit sigil from the wall. Dean. Lotto good that does us now. Ed and Harry were real, them and their stupid ghost facers thing. Glor. A FIDE YouTube series for gullible people. They got in our way a bit, but we got rid of them in the end. Blank, underscore, blank. Winchester Confidential. 18-something wicked. Sam. This is a case that hit home pretty hard. But it didn't happen for us the way it happened in canon. Yes, we went to Fitchburg, Wisconsin on a lead from Dad, and figured out pretty quickly that something weird was affecting the kids there. There was no old lady with an inverted cross at the hospital. That's just a red herring the show added to keep viewers curious. Dean recognized what looked like a F.A.int charcoal handprint on Bethany's windowsill, along with some black smudges on the window sash, but the wall was clean. The show just had one almost pristine handprint. Like, what monster leaves a signature like that? They like to go undetected if possible. Now, Dean, what exactly happened when we were kids? This is something we need to get straight. Dean. I never wanted to tell you about this. But here's what happened. Dad left us in a hotel. Why? I don't know. Pretty stupid thing to do when the monster he was chasing was coming after kids. But I guess he thought since we were on the outskirts of town, he'd be able to catch it before it got to us. Sammy was whining about the food I made him, which is pretty lousy, all things considered. Sure, it was out of a can, but he didn't understand. How tough it was for a 9-year-old to make dinner for two. Sam. Sorry, Dean. Whatever. It had been a few days, and I was going stir crazy. I put a salt line across the door and windowsills and locked Sam inside. I went down to the arcade for a while, played a couple of games and bought a soda. My money ran out, so I finished the soda on my way back to our room. When I got back, everything seemed normal except that our bedroom window was open a crack. I figured Sam opened it, not knowing how dangerous that could be, and I went to close it. The Striga was right outside, looking at me. I jumped back, totally freaked. I should have shut the window instead. A moth flew in through the crack before I recovered enough to slam the window shut and lock it. Then I went for the shotgun. When I got back with it, the Striga was looming over Sam. There was a glow, not sure if it was coming from its eyes or mouth, or from Sam. That part was a blur. I shot and wounded it right before Dad burst in and also shot it. The Striga saw the open door as the easier exit, turned back into a moth, and flittered out. Dad found the handprint and explained to me that the windowsill and sash were made of wood. And the Striga's touch makes any organic material wither. He checked Sammy over while he explained how it lives on the breath of life. Then he saw my soda can and all hell broke loose. He knew I had left Sam alone. He packed us off to Pastor Jim's while he tried to finish the hunt, but the wounded Striga must have decided to lay low. It didn't pop up again for 17 years. Sam, Michael, and Asher didn't live at the hotel where we stayed. That's something the writers did to make it more convenient for scene planning. They're kids we met in town with their mom, Joanna. We commented there were hardly any kids out and about, and she told us she was worried that her kids could be next to get the strange condition. We told her we were investigating and even offered to watch over the kids in shifts while they slept, so we could help identify the first sign of anything wrong. Dean may be a little overeager with the ladies, but when there are kids involved, he is able to set that aside and gain parents' confidence. It would be creepy if he didn't have the best of intentions. I'm not as much of the playboy type, so parents trust me pretty quickly anyway. Still, I worry about some of the people who trust us. We have fake badges, bad guys can too. Well, this Striga got a little too smart. She went down to the front door and rang the bell. Must have flown up as a moth and seen me on guard. Naturally, I wanted to answer the door before the noise woke up the family. No one was there. I turned and ran back up the stairs as fast as I could in the dark, yelling for Dean. He came out of the guest room as I passed by, and the boy's mom wasn't far behind. She must have worked quickly. By the time I got back and flipped on the light, Asher was already affected, and the moth was flying out the open window. Dean ran to the window while I went to examine Asher. Damn. Joanna stood trembling in the doorway. What happened? Michael was sitting up in bed, looking from one person to another. I looked at Michael. Did you open the window? Michael shook his head. Joanna rubbed her arms as if her short-sleeved pajamas weren't warm enough and stammered more questions. I tried to give her some explanation. Someone rang the doorbell. I think that's what woke me, Joanna acknowledged. I went down to see who was there, but there was no one. I had a really bad feeling about it. So I ran back up here and found the window open. I'm afraid Asher was infected while I was gone. But that's you were just gone for a minute. Did Asher open the window? I don't understand. Dean and I looked at each other. She couldn't know the truth, but she sure wasn't satisfied. Joanna, I know this sounds bizarre, but we think someone might be infecting the children on purpose, Dean said gravely. What? Someone? Why? Domestic terrorism. We aren't certain yet, but someone used the doorbell to lure Sam downstairs. It's too big a coincidence that the window was open when he got back. I don't believe this. I jumped into the conversation. Until we have proof, we can't make this theory public or it would cause a panic and the terrorist would go underground. They'd pop up in another town when the panic dies down. If we're right, we have to get the monster responsible for this before anyone else gets hurt. What about Asher? Is he? Asher stirred. He wasn't completely comatose like the other victims. This is out of our wheelhouse, Dean admitted. You should have him checked at the hospital. If he wasn't exposed as long as the other kids, maybe there's something they can do. Right, I'll get dressed. Michael got up and went to Asher's bed, looking at him solemnly. It's my fault. I should have stayed awake too. This isn't your fault, I told him. They would have found a way to trick you too. Dean cut in, but you can help us now. Tell your mom you don't want to go to the hospital, and you can help us catch the bad guy. How? Michael asked. We came clean on what the Stiga was. And how we could use him for bait. We would never have done it if we didn't know that the creature was most vulnerable while feeding. We weren't sure we had won him over by the time Joanna returned. Michael, you're not ready, she said. Michael looked at Asher, who was squirming a little and making some soft noises. I don't want to go to the hospital, he said. Can't I stay with Sam and Dean? We had given them our real first names. It seemed harmless, since they were just an average family. You can leave him with us, Dean said. Trust me, neither of us is going to sleep the rest of the night. One of us will be with him at all times, and probably both of us. After only a little hesitation, Joanna agreed. She carried Asher out to the car, and I locked the door behind her. Then Dean and I waited, encouraging Michael to be brave. He was, let me tell you, nerves of steel for a kid his age. The rest played out like it did in canon. The kids got better. Definitely a win that felt good. But I still feel bad that Michael has to live with knowing there are monsters out there. Dean, we're still wading through our canon, trying to figure out what's what, I swear. One of us is always getting the crap beat out of us, and it's hard to watch. If it's Sam, it makes me feel like my insides are full of ice. If it's Saws, it makes me want to go kill whoever's throwing him around. If it's me, Sam and Saws start trying to touch me, like they think I'm gonna disappear or melt if they don't keep a hold of me. I've told them to cut it out, but I guess they can't help themselves. We're all kind of a mess, always asking each other, do you remember that? And yelling, that didn't happen. I'm tired, I'm stressed. 4 seasons to go. Wait, there are 15. Crap, 6 to go. It's been a few days since Saws had to intervene and save me from a really bad setback. Well, today I had a big one. I'm not going to go into detail about how I screwed up, but it was one of the things Saws has been trying hard to get me to reform on, and I didn't just drop the ball. I shut him out. See, over here, we have a little bit of a shared consciousness and shared memories, and on a typical day, Saws can hear what anyone is thinking at any given moment, and normally no one can shut him out of their head, and it's really annoying. But today, I guess my selfish don't give a flying rip attitude trumped everything else. I started thinking about falling off the wagon. I started going about acquiring the means to fall off the wagon, something Saws calls making provision for the flesh. And then I sensed that Saws wanted to check on me, and I was like, nope. Not today. It almost wasn't a conscious thing. Like, I totally gaslit myself. I kept thinking, I'll probably let Saws intervene again. And I won't end up sinning too bad. Then I was thinking, so I'm actively looking for a good chance to commit the sin. I won't actually go through with it. I'll probably stop myself, and Saws won't even have to intervene. And somehow that morphed into, so what if he's trying to intervene? I'm just gonna shut everything out and do it anyway. And above all, I fought super hard against thinking about God. The really terrible thing is that I was doing well. I kept Saws around when one of my temptations was strong, and he helped me beat it back every time, even if it was just by hanging around talking to me. I was doing so well that the other day I even got his okay to hang out at a club with this girl. We danced and I had a beer, asked the girl to make sure I just had one. Just in case my resolve wasn't strong enough, and other than a little cursing and a couple of impure thoughts, I was a pretty good boy. But not today. So, after I fell off the wagon, I let my barrier down and Sam came to check on me. He was like, you all right? Because he hadn't seen me at all that day, and I was like, yup. Can you ask Saws to come here? So then again, he's like, you sure you're all right? And I say, Peachy, get Saws in here. Then Saws arrives, and I hate that he doesn't scold or yell or preach. He just knows exactly what happened by looking at me, and he gets that look. Like a dad who finds that his kid wiped out on pavement and is covered with road rash. Oh, Dean, Dang it, I wish he'd been mad at me. I was mad at me. I shouldn't have shut you out. I know if I saw it your name you'd have been here to help. I'm sorry. He just nodded and came to my side. Are you all right? Do you need? No, I'm just give me a minute. I knew he would want to pray with me, but I couldn't yet. I felt like I was sitting in a puddle of blood or something. I needed to feel clean physically before I could dare approach God for spiritual cleansing. I went to the bathroom and shed my teeth and made sure my hair wasn't a disgrace. I even put on different clothes. Might as well treat this like a total reset. Saz waited patiently for me to finish up. He was sitting on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall. If it were anyone but Saz, it would be a little creepy. Are you ready? I sighed. As I'll ever be. It's already far from one of my proudest times, but to make matters worse, there were tears halfway through that prayer. I said I was sorry for letting Saz down, and he gripped my shoulder tight, not wanting to interrupt, but still wanting to reassure me before I was done. When I finally got out an amen, Saz echoed it and pulled me into a hug. For what it's worth, he said, I forgive you. And God loves you more than I do. That was kind of overwhelming. I wanted to snap at him not to be gay, but I was too choked up to say anything. Let me tell you something about Lucifer. He trains his minions to whisper doubts to people. They encourage sin and anxiety. When you're thinking about sinning, they tell you, go ahead. It's not a big deal. It doesn't hurt anyone. Besides, you'll get forgiven after. You can always start over. And as soon as you give in, they change their tune. They say, what a terrible thing you've done. You always mess up. You don't deserve to be forgiven. You shouldn't even ask. How many times do you think you can get a free pass? You can't listen to them, Dean. God's grace is sufficient for you, no matter how many times you fail. I was doing so well, I managed to grumble. I guess maybe I let my guard down. He agreed. You were doing well. I'm proud of the progress you've made. But I told you this wasn't going to be easy. The way is straight, but the gate is narrow. I wonder if maybe you've come to rely on me too much to guard you. That got me a little worried that he was going to back off and not help me as much, but he went on. I need to help you get stronger so you can fight harder if I can't be there. I sighed, relieved. He was still holding on to me, almost like he forgot I was in his arms, and I put my head on his shoulder like the last time he did this. I mumbled into his starched collar, how do I get stronger? I'll give you some verses to memorize. This one will help keep you on guard. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. Sounds about right, I muttered. And when you find yourself tempted, think of this one. Submit yourselves therefore to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. He'll run away, just like that. He prefers not to fight where he doesn't have an advantage. Of course, you'll still have to deal with your own selfishness even when there aren't any demons encouraging you to sin. Awesome. Total sarcasm. Try to commit those to memory. I'll help you. Of course he would help me. Ever since Sammy and I showed interest in becoming born again, Saz has been eager to help. It he wants to see us in heaven someday. Me, I'll settle for not going back to hell. __. Winchester Confidential. 19 Provenance. Sam, I wish I could help Dean with his reformation. But I'm new to practicing religion too. I haven't had the same struggles, not because I'm a better person than him, I've just had a totally different approach to life. I like beer, but I rarely drink to excess. I like women, but most of the time I can keep it to admiration rather than lust. I try to eat healthy, and I don't find it necessary to curse a lot. So, you'd think I find the faith thing a pretty easy thing to step into. Unfortunately, I am still having trouble with my anger and some other issues. Anyway, let's talk about the case of the haunted painting in New York. This episode is fairly accurate, except that we salted all of the cremated remains in the mausoleum, which weakened the ghost slightly, but then burning the father's bones made her stronger again. The show made a few parts of it more dramatic than necessary, jump scares and all that. I liked Sarah, and Dean offered to let us stay in town a while, but I'm not like him, I don't stick around just to have some fun and then bail. I was starting to let Jess go, but I doubted I would ever get another good, committed relationship like that. Dean. I'm not like that anymore. Sam. You've been reforming for what, a month? Forgive me for not being convinced that you're cured. Blank, underscore, blank. Winchester Confidential. 20 Dead Man's Blood. Dean. As far as I can remember, this one was similar to Canon. Dad's friend Daniel Elkins was killed and we went to investigate. Dad did too, and we crossed paths again. This is when we learned about that damned cult. Sorry about the cuss word saws, but you have to admit. The cult is sort of a weapon of the damned. So it's in context. So, we had a vampire hunt with Dad, and he and Sam started arguing like they used to. It pissed me off. I really wanted them to get along better after a couple of years apart. Apparently Dad and Sam had a better conversation when I wasn't around. Maybe they knew they had to try to get along when I wasn't there to be a buffer. I know they wanted to get along, but there has to be real effort. We took out some vampires and got the cult from them, and they had presumably gotten it from Elkins's place. We only got out alive with the cult because we worked together, so Dad decided we should stay together. Sam. You mean it worked because we disregarded Dad's orders to stay away? Dean. You are such a glass half empty kinda guy. Blank, underscore, blank. Winchester Confidential. 21 Salvation. Sam. Pastor Jim was killed by Meg. The show doesn't do a good job of conveying how personal this was. We loved Jim as much as Bobby. He was a second dad to us. Bobby is wonderful too, but he was our third dad. Pastor Jim was the one Dad left us with most when we were little, when I was a baby. But also a couple of times when we were a bit older. He made us go to Sunday school and would quiz us on his sermons over lunch and dinner on Sundays. He had been a hunter, but felt called to lead a church instead. Still, he kept his tools and weapons in good working order, in case he ever needed to defend his parish. The show also didn't do a good job of showing how he went down. Dean and I know that Pastor Jim was sharp. He would wrestle with us and teach us kickboxing and stuff, and when we're older he let us practice knife throwing and other use of weapons out behind the parsonage. He introduced us to silencers, really good idea if you don't want the cops showing up on your hunt, and wrote out a few different exorcisms for us. He was a good hunter. It wasn't easy for Meg to take him out. He fought hard, but she had help. We figure she had at least one other demon with her that night, maybe a few. Pastor Jim worked on homework with Dean. He sat up with us at night when Dean was having nightmares about the house fire or I was crying because I was worried about Dad. He read to us, prayed with us, tucked us in at night. He was a good guy. He gave us our first stable home since Mom died. He deserves so much more recognition than this one episode. Dean. Amen to that. He even talked to me about my first crush and other awkward coming-of-age stuff. Heck, I think he did more for my transition to manhood than Dad did. Certainly when it came to understanding what was going on. Dad was just like, don't worry, you'll figure it out. Sam. He must have decided after going through that with you that he wasn't going to talk about any of that stuff with me. Pastor Jim gave me the talk. Dean. For real, how was that? Sam. Awkward, but it would have been more awkward with Dad. Dean. If you say so. Sam. In this episode, we start really hunting yellow eyes with Dad. I started feeling sick with guilt and frustration because it seemed like it was my fault Mom and Jess died. We told Dad about my visions. In canon he was upset with us for not telling him about them. In our memories, he said he knew about them already. Missouri Mosley had filled him in. That really pissed Dean off. Seemed like Dad had been in touch with her more than with us in the last year. He admitted that he shouldn't have been so evasive with us. It's hard to talk about what happened that night. It wasn't exactly like canon, but close enough that I don't feel like sussing out the little details. Dean and I had a pretty emotionally charged argument. I felt responsible for a lot of the crap in our lives. And I wanted to get yellow eyes at any cost. But Dean would rather have me than revenge. Back then, that was a big deal. But now, it's a given. These days, our priorities are different. The fate of the world comes first. Then us being together and safe. Then things like revenge and other relationships. 1 and 2 were reversed for a while there, but now that we have hope of making it to H. Even maybe we'll be together and safe in the end anyway. Dean. Did I mention that Saws had a nightmare about beating the ever-loving crap out of me? I wake up to him pawing at me, apologizing, begging me to say something. I'm like, dude. I'm fine. I don't know what your deal is, but cut it out. He so rarely sleeps, so it didn't occur to me that he had been dreaming, you know. Once I figured he was dreaming about that one episode where he almost killed me because he'd been brainwashed by that Naomi Bayer chick. Then I knew to remind him that we weren't even sure that really happened to us and he had nothing to be sorry for. Except maybe groping me. Not gonna lie, I've had that nightmare myself. He still feels terrible about it, no matter how much I tell him to move on. And now I'm typing this late at night because I don't want to sleep because I'm afraid I'll have my own nightmare about beating the crap out of Saws under the influence of the Mark of Cain. This has to stop, not least of all because Levi is a tea guy. And he hates it when I drink coffee, and that's also keeping me awake right now. Please tell me that most of this didn't really happen and it's just Hollywood. Writers adding on to our canon because they didn't want their cash cow to run dry. Seriously, how many times do Sam and I have to die? They've got us wanting to die. The maddest thing a man can do, apparently. Well, the other day Saws dropped a bombshell on me. Not in the, hey, ass butt, way. More in the, guess what I never told you because my memories are screwed up, way. I wake up, and he's hovering. Not literally with his wings. But you know hovering. Probably woke me up with that, someone's watching me, feeling. I start to get my breathing mechanisms working. You know how everything seems to be clogged or leaking in the morning. Or both somehow, and I stretch and say, what's up, Saws? He's used to this saying by now, so he doesn't look at the ceiling. I remembered something. What a serious voice, I think. Must be important. I shove myself back so my pillow squishes against the bed frame and I'm sitting up a little, or at least my head is propped up pretty good. Care to share? Serious face, too. Grave, almost. It's just a shade of difference that you'd only notice if you knew Saws well. Haha, 50 Shades of Grave. Anyway, when you were a child, he looks away, like he doesn't want to tell me after all. I sit up more. Come on, out with it. No secrets. That's how we figure out what the hell really happened, right? Sorry, what the heck really happened? I appreciate how hard you're trying. But swearing by hell doesn't bother me so much, since I know you know it's a real place and you don't take it lightly. There's nothing holy about the name hell. Are you stalling? No, as far as I know. Saws can't lie unless he was lying about that, so I let it go. When I was a child, I prompted. Saws moved to sit on the bed, and I made room for him, sitting up almost all the way now. When you were a child I was your guardian angel. I admit, I was flabbergasted. Completely at a loss for words. I didn't know how to feel. Especially since, as far as I know, that ain't canon. No one ever mentioned kids having guardian angels, either. I had no warning about this curveball. Blank, _ blank. Winchester Confidential. 22 Devil's Trap. Sam. This was the first time I saw Bobby as an adult. We definitely needed help. Oh, and this wasn't the first time Dean and I had seen a devil's trap, but it's what convinced us that we needed to learn to draw one quickly, memorize how to do it. Canon had us get only the word sunrise out of Meg, but I remember she actually said Sunrise Apartments, which helped us find Dad much more quickly than we would have otherwise. Our scheme to empty the building worked. In the show, we dressed as firemen and made everyone think there was a fire. In my memory, we posed as natural gas experts and told the superintendent that someone had reported a possible gas leak. The guy could smell demon sulfur in the air, so he bought it and helped us evacuate the building. We got his card and said we would alert him when it was safe to go back in. Actually, we forgot to contact him and tell him it was safe. You can't blame us. Once we got Dad to the cabin, we had a lot to talk about, and then the demon took over Dad's body and he almost killed Dean. Then I had to play chicken with the demon to convince it I would kill it if it didn't leave. As soon as that was over, I lost my dinner. I had considered killing my father to take out our mom's killer. Anyone would have felt like puking. Both Dean and Dad were pretty badly hurt, so I had to get them to the hospital. No arguing over the questions that would be sked about the gunshot wound in Dad's leg. This was a serious emergency, and we weren't sure how bad Dean's injuries were. We couldn't just go to Bobby's and hope for the best. Yes, on the way to the hospital, a demon rammed us. And the Impala rolled off the road. The show made the collision look really impressive. I doubt it looked like that in real life. It certainly didn't feel spectacular. I was filled with a dread. It was like this was it, we were all going to die right there. I even think I saw a light for a second, more like a flash than a glow. Maybe I hit my head. But when I came around, I realized we were in huge trouble. I wouldn't be able to get the Impala out of the ditch, even if it was drivable. And Dad and Dean weren't moving. Oh, God, please. Don't let them die. Help us. I don't know if God listened to my prayer or not. The demon driver came over and I had to play chicken again. Like his boss, he decided not to overplay his hand. Finally, the first responders got there. Then, the helicopter. We were on our way to the hospital again. Now, go to sleep, Dean. Blank, _ blank. Winchester Confidential. 23 in my time of dying. Dean. Hell, no, not yet, anyway. So yeah, demon encounter, helicopter. This was while I was unconscious. Comatose, actually. And when I got up, I noticed almost right away that my body didn't come with me. I was TTING myself out of my hospital room and saw my body out of the corner of my eye like, WTH, I just vacated that bed. Who's in it? And then I had a super freaky out-of-body experience. For real. Then I started wandering the halls. Trying to find Dad and Sam, trying to get someone to notice me. It was so frustrating hearing them talk about me, the demon, the cult, not being able to tell them I needed help. And after Sam left to meet Bobby, Dad just sat there. I wasn't just frustrated at that, I got pissed off. I didn't see the Reaper until it came for me. It walked into my room while Dad and Sam were arguing again. It sat on my bed. And I instantly knew it wasn't just some random girl in white who wandered into the wrong room. Dad and Sam didn't see her. Hey, who the hell are you? Ely glanced my way before reaching out toward my body. Whoa, buy me a drink first, I said, rushing over to take her by the wrist. I was surprised that she felt solid. Finally, someone could hear me. Meanwhile, my heart monitor had made an upset-sounding beep when she reached out, so I had the idea she wasn't trying to help me. Dean Winchester, she said clearly. A weird chill went through me when she said it. It was an unpleasant feeling, but kinda familiar. What are you? I am Tessa. Nice to meet you. She held out her hand. Notice, I said what, not who. She dropped her hand with a sigh. You're about to die, Dean. I'm here to take you away. No, she raised an eyebrow. You're going to be difficult. Look, my brother dragged me across the country to save my life, and one of your kind ended up doing it. I know it wasn't his original plan, but hey, tell him thanks for me. I'll tell you thanks for him. You did free him, after all. But what's your point? You want to undo Hi's work after someone else had to die for me. I got a lot of life left. Oh, Dean, he wasn't the first to die for you. She looked like she knew a secret. Castiel. She was talking about Jesus. Dean. I know that now. I had no clue at the time. I didn't know what to say to that, and I had more pressing problems. Let me ask you something. The other guy was this tall dude in a suit, looked kinda old. He didn't look that way due to age. He was withered because he had been tethered and enslaved. He's doing much better now. As for my appearance, I figured you would like it. You like young women, don't you? She had me there. So you're actually an old dude in a suit. Remember, I didn't know that Reapers were angels. She blinked at me slowly, like she was running out of patience. You'll have to go with me eventually, Dean. Why drag this out? Do I really have a choice? She hesitated, and I hoped. You do, but it's not a pleasant one. And she told me about people who refuse to move on, how they become angry spirits. My heartbeat was good again. The doctor left after checking me. Dad went who knows where, probably what they showed in canon, and Sam went for the Ouija board. I argued with the Reaper more while Sam was gone. Is your name even really Tessa? No. What is it? It doesn't matter. I don't stay with you after I convey you. You may never see me again. I like to have a name to accompany my cuss words. But inside I was thinking, may never. So, there's an afterlife besides being a ghost. Again with the slow blink. Are you really a girl? No, my kind don't have male and female. Okay, a little bit of an overshare for our first conversation, but must you stall like this? You know the last thing your father and brother want is to have to hunt you. Don't talk about my family like you have any clue. I do, actually. I have a brother who turned on my family. We're still having trouble with him. My turn to blink. Look, I'm sorry for your loss, but I got problems of my own. They need me. I can't go with you. I can't. She sighs, gets up off the bed. It's time. Please come quietly. I'm behind schedule as it is. Oh, you due to kill someone else at tea time? Something like that. How long have you had this job? Not my whole life, but longer than your whole life. You like your job. I'm good at it, but do you like it? You need not concern yourself with such things. We have a river to cross. Or a road, if you prefer that metaphor. I don't swim so good, and I'd rather drive than walk. I was just blowing smoke. I'm a decent swimmer. Fine. You want to drive. I can give you the illusion that you're driving out of here, if that's what you really want. Sweet offer, but my answer is the same. It went on like that until Sam got back with the Ouija board. This is a waste of time, Tessa said. Dean, are you here? Sam asked. I guided the pointer to yes. Sam. It's called a planchette. Dean. Who gives a fart? Anyway, after we saw that the board worked. I spelled R-E-A-P. Reaper. Asked Sam. Yes. Is it after you? Yes. He can't do anything about it, said Tessa. Sam stared at the board. Dean, if it's here of its own accord. He shook his head. There's no way to stop it. Told ya. I don't believe this, I grumbled. I went to look for Dad, but he wasn't around. You don't have to be afraid of death, Dean, Tessa called after me. In your case, you won't even have any pain. I knew she was right. I hadn't felt any pain since I woke up there, even when I ran into something. Hey, why is it I could run into something by accident? But when I wanted to move stuff, I couldn't. Why were some things solid, like the floor, and others not? Castiel. Walking on level ground is the most natural thing to you. As a ghost, you would start doing it without even thinking about it, and your spirit instincts would guide you. However, objects and walls give you more trouble. You expect the wall to be solid, so it usual. Why starts that way, and it takes a while for you to get used to going through them. Objects lose their meaning and usefulness to the dead, so they find connecting with them particularly difficult. Overall, all new ghosts have trouble figuring out how to have a physical existence in a supernatural environment. You were actually quite quick in your exploration and ability to touch things. Dean. Great, I should win a prize. Blank, underscore, blank. It's still Dean, but I had to take a break. Actually, Saws told me it was 4 in the morning and reminded me that I had said I would take melatonin to counteract the late-night coffee, but I hadn't taken it. I didn't have an argument. I took the pill and bedded down, mumbling a half-assed apology. Then I really apologized to everyone. This morning after I slept most of the morning away and wasted a lot of Mairead's time. I felt so sleepy I had to have a hair of the dog with breakfast, and by that I mean more coffee. But I promised not to drink coffee before bed ever again, so now I'm having cocoa. Anyway, Tessa kept trying to get me to go with her, and I went from arguing to begging. I went back to my room and found Sam sitting by my body, talking to me. He was telling me that he didn't know what to do, but he would keep trying as long as I kept fighting for my life. He said something about us starting to be brothers again, so I couldn't leave. That killed me. I told Tessa my family needed me. She just told me that lots of people made that point, particularly soldiers on the battlefield. So much life left to live. But did I really want to risk becoming an angry spirit while I waited on Sam to try to find a way to save me? Wouldn't I rather leave that pain behind? I remembered how she hinted that this wouldn't be the end. That she wanted to take me somewhere. What's it like? The place you'll take me? I asked. She shook her head. I can't tell you beforehand. You have all of the information you need already. The rest is a surprise. That was cryptic and generally unhelpful. I worried that there were options in the afterlife, and I might not have lived well enough to get the best option, you know. Castiel. You hadn't. At least, you didn't have faith. That's the key. Dean. So, I would have gone to hell. Figures. It's time to choose. I really didn't feel good about my options. But I also knew from what E had told me that she couldn't force me to go, even if it was supposedly time. The lights flickered. Dramatic effect. Trying to pressure me. That isn't me. Then came the demon. No black smoke like a shadowy trail of distortion that almost looked like gasoline fumes. Tessa screamed something like, "You can't do this." Then her eyes went yellow. "Today's your lucky day, kid." Before I could decide on a reaction, her hand connected with my forehead and I woke up in my hospital bed, gagging on a tube. I didn't remember what happened while I was under. It took me a long time to remember all this. Along with some guidance from Missouri, I figure that yellow eyes possessed Tessa, which isn't supposed to be possible. Castiel. In her true form, he would certainly not have been able to do it. But in the shape she chose to present to you, he could force his will on her long enough to cause someone else to die in your place. I heard later that Tessa was embarrassed and angry about what had happened. And she asked Azrael to interfere, to resurrect the one who died in your place and let her collect you. However, in this case the man who died in your place was a wicked man who was never going to change his ways. Innocents were safer without him. And Azrael knew that God had a special interest in your family, since he had discussed the Ronanel situation with him. He overruled Tessa's request. This is the second time a Reaper spared you from hell. Dean. Great. How many of your guys do I owe my eternal life to? Anyway, the doctor didn't know how right he was when he said I had an angel watching over me. I didn't remember anything, but my stomach felt empty and heavy at the same time. Dad and Sam started arguing again, but to our shock, it was Dad who backed down first. He told Sam he didn't want to fight. This is where things get different from canon again. After Dad said he didn't know what they were always fighting about, he pulled Sam out the door, and I didn't hear the rest of their conversation. Sam. He took me into the hall and spoke quietly, just out of sight and hearing of Dean. I know we've butted heads a lot, son. And I know there's a lot to forgive. But let's try to leave it behind, He gave me a really sincere look. It's not really fair, but I felt like I wanted in, 100%. I didn't know what to say, so I just gave a little nod. You've got Dean back, and I hope in time you can let go of all the things I put you through, the things I said. I always loved you, Sammy. For all my faults, I always did. That broke me. I hugged him tight. I know, Dad. He hugged me back and even petted my hair like I was a kid again. I didn't care. Good man. Dad slapped my back and pulled away. I could see his eyes were misty. He cleared his throat. Would you get me a cup of caffeine? It was a good excuse to escape the sudden awkwardness. Yeah, sure. I hurried away to get some coffee. Dean. He came back into my room, and I could tell it had gotten emotional out there. But I hadn't heard any yelling, so I figured it was a good thing. Then he started mending fences with me, apologizing for making me grow up too fast and stuff. And then he said he was so proud of me. Is that really you talking? Last time he said he was proud of me, it was a demon talking, so it's no surprise I was worried. Yes, it's me. Why are you telling me all this? I was getting choked up. Dad didn't talk to me like this. He gave orders and the most praise I usually got out of him was a nod or a pat on the shoulder. That had always been enough. At least I thought so before. I need you to watch out for Sam. Yeah, I will. I'm trying to sound casual, but that doesn't seem right. Something's really wrong. Like Dad knows something is coming. Somit. Hing really bad that he isn't sure he'll live through. You're scaring me. Don't be scared. He put a hand on my shoulder and leaned in close. If you're a Winchester and another guy is getting up in your face, you figure it's a trick of some kind, a demon's about to show you his black eyes or something. But what Dad said next freaked me out more. There might come a time when Sam gets dangerous. If you can't stop him, you might have to kill him. I stared at him. What the ever-loving hell? No, is this really you? You can't be serious. If that's true, tell me more. But I couldn't find words. I watched him walk out of my room. He never came back. Dean. Man. So much keeps happening. We shouldn't be watching our canon so fast, but we're in the middle of season 11 now. So, after Saz told me he was my guardian angel, I finally said, "Tell me more." He laced his hands together and stared at them. "I looked after you for 4 years, and it was an easy job up until then. Your mother was a believer. Maybe her doctrine didn't run very deep, but she had faith, always told you that angels were watching over you when you went to sleep. That gave me hope for you. That I'd be a believer someday. Yes, sometimes it runs in families, sometimes it doesn't. When a child reaches an age when he can responsibly choose to have faith or reject God, his guardian's job changes or terminates. It usually happens near puberty. If he has faith, the guardian continues to watch over him, gradually leaving more and more often for other duties, until the child becomes a full adult, at which time a guardian will check on him less frequently. Quote, and if he rejects God, then the assignment is terminated. That sucks. One could argue that the child's life could justly be ended at that point, but God usually gives countless chances for an individual to change his mind. He is just and merciful, I guess. But you said you were my guardian until I was 4. Yes. Then your mother conceived again, and another angel was assigned to him. Often only one guardian is assigned per household, but in some cases each child has his own. I think God knew that your family would need extra support. What was his name? Your buddy cop guardian angel. Starsky. I stared at him until his features softened and I realized he was joking. Wow, you really got me. His name was Shamriel. What's that mean? The Lord protects. A bit on the nose. He had more experience at being a child's guardian than I did. He stayed near your mother throughout the pregnancy, watched over his birth, protected him at his circumcision. Whoa, too much information. Saz looked at me like he had no freaking idea why I was upset. I mean, I assumed, but I never needed to hear that out loud. He blinked. All right, then, anyway, he was with Sam every moment until he was 6 months old. Then we were attacked by demons. Shamriel and I were the targets, not you and Sam. We didn't understand why, since Lucifer's chief objective was nearly always to lead humans astray, not open warfare with the angels, but we had no time to ponder their motives. We fought hard, but we were outnumbered. Shamriel was mortally wounded before they withdrew. Saz stopped talking, looking at his hands again. I waited a good long time, but after a while I got the idea that he was kind of stuck. I put my hand on his arm. Saz, you okay? He glanced at me quickly, then sighed at his hands. What happened? I prompted him. I cried out for help, but they had coordinated their attack with another many leagues away. By the time help arrived, he had died in my arms. I was too spent to heal him. I forgot I wasn't supposed to curse. Damn, Saz, I'm so sorry. Blank. Winchester Confidential. 24 Everybody Loves a Clown, Part 1. Sam. For some reason I never thought Dad would die until shortly before he did. I always figured he'd be too stubborn to die, hang around into his 70s at least, maybe 80s. But then Dean and I were lying to the hospital, saying we had made arrangements with a funeral home, working with Bobby, who rented a hearse and posed as a mortician, to get Dad's body off the premises. Bobby helped us build the pyre, knowing well that that's what hunters do. We don't leave the body to get reanimated by a demon. We salt it and burn it like everyone else with a problematic spirit. For some reason it didn't occur to us to try to revive him. We were suspicious of his death, thought there must have been some reason he didn't tell us, but Dean didn't let me in on what Dad had told him. It seemed far more likely that Dad's corpse would get abused than that we could find a way to bring him back. Bobby agreed. Once the fire was burning well, he left me and Dean to watch it. To make sure it didn't catch anything else on fire. I wanted to say something. A little speech was the least I could do, right? But the words wouldn't come. I didn't know what Dean was thinking. I was afraid to break the silence. I know this is unpleasant, but I have to say this. Burning flesh is one of the worst stenches in the world. It's not quite as bad as rotting flesh, but pretty close. Burning bones is bad enough. But those we don't have to totally destroy with the fire, thank goodness. It just has to scorch and purge them. Cremating someone takes a lot more fuel. The human body is made up of a lot of water. Something like 2/3, and bone is very reluctant to burn too. We wrap the body so there's at least a layer of ash keeping us from seeing all the nasty details. Still, it's not a good experience. Funerals are happy compared to this. A few minutes after Bobby left, I asked Dean if Dad had said anything to him before he died, wanting just one more scrap of communication from my dad. Even if it had been to Dean. Dean said no. I took that to mean nothing significant, because I had been pretty sure Dad went back into Dean's room when I went to get the coffee, but I didn't push him for more. We stood out there over an hour without talking. Then Bobby came back with coffee and we sat around drinking it and watching the fire. "All right," Bobby said. "We're all in shock, and I'm not going to tell you to snap out of it. But I do think we should honor tradition a bit. I don't know about you, but I have some stories about your old man that might surprise you." I glanced at Dean. His eyes were fixed on the fire and he didn't say anything. I knew he was hurting, probably worse than I was. I deeply regretted the way my relationship with Dad had gone, but Dad was Dean's world for like 20 years. This had to hit so hard. Bobby went on. "There was that time he helped Dean modify his first sawed-off shotgun in my shop. You still have it, boy?" Dean nodded, still looking at the fire. "'Member when it was done and he said, 'Let's try her out.' And you went out back, set up the cans, and right when he went to squeeze off the first round, he had to sneeze." Bobby's strained, mournful face was being won over by a smile. "He hit that '85 Ford you were working on broadside," Dean commented. "You were pissed as hell." "Yup, I was. Shouldn't have been. Fords ain't worth spit." "Damn right." Dean sipped his coffee. He still hadn't looked away from the fire, but at least he was talking. I managed a small smile. "Remember that time Dad was heading out and Bobby told him to stop in Worthing for gas, and Dad said he could make to wherever?" "I forget." Bobby shook his head at the memory. "Damn, he was stubborn. Said he knew exactly how many drops of fuel his car needed to go a quarter of a mile, and he'd make it to Beresford. He tried to thumb a ride to get gas half an hour before he could humble himself enough to call me." My smile grew a little. "ND then you told him you'd put a gas can in the trunk?" Bobby laughed. "Oh, he was madder in a hornet. 'Don't you ever put things in my car if I don't ask you to,' he says. And I go, 'You're welcome.'" Even Dean's expression was a little less hard now. "Tell us one we don't know," he said. Bobby nodded slowly, looking thoughtfully at the fire. "There was one time in the mid-90s, 94, maybe. Your dad brought you to my place in a hurry, and went off by himself. Dean wanted to go with him bad, but John wouldn't budge. Wouldn't say why. Remember, it was summer," Dean recalled. "He didn't tell us what he was dealing with after, either." "Well, I'll tell you. He had a lead on a succubus. We didn't know much about them yet, and Dean was very interested in girls at that point. Your dad didn't want to risk taking him along. Probably also wasn't too keen on explaining the monster to you. I still don't know for sure what's true in the lore. They say they take human semen for the reproduction of demons. But that doesn't make much sense to me. Demons don't give birth, otherwise they wouldn't go to the trouble of spawning with human females from time to time. All I do know is, if you're innocent, they'll take that away. And you might lose your life in the bargain." Knowing Dean, that would have been quite a dangerous monster for him to face in his mid-teens. It was a good call for Dad to protect him like that. He did neglect us, but at least sometimes it was for our own good. "How about a funny one he never told us?" I asked. Bobby looked at the ground and chuckled. "What? Lemme think of one." "No, you thought of one just now," Dean accused, finally looking away from the fire and at Bobby. "What was it?" "Well, this one's more about me, but your dad was there." "You got Ta promise not to give me a hard time if I tell you." "We promise," I said. Dean crossed his heart. "Okay," said Bobby. "We were at a dive bar one night. He'd left you boys with Pastor Jim that time, and the case took him up my way. So we got together when he was done. Anyway, we let loose and got pretty tipsy. Decided to hustle some pool. So, he was letting me beat him to lure people in, you know. And like I said, we'd been drinking a lot. So, we had a few people watching the game when I was pretty close to winning. I dropped the chalk on the floor and bent over to pick it up. Bobby suppressed a giggle. And I split my pants. I laughed loudly, probably because I was so tired of all the bad feelings. I had to let it out. Dean smiled, and I saw his stomach jumping with silent laughs. Bobby went on. Needless to say, we didn't get around to hustling anyone. Actually, we didn't finish the game. John had mercy on me and took me home, and I made him swear he would never tell a soul, not even you boys. And as far as I know, he kept his promise. We kept talking for hours, getting up to use the bathroom, to get beer, for Bobby to answer his phone. Finally, the fire was low. We got a supply of shovels and banked the ashes so we could go to bed without worrying about it spreading. I want to take this opportunity to say something. Yes, our dad was neglectful, and sometimes he drank too much. But he wasn't a mean drunk, and Dean didn't have to protect me from him. He didn't get mad and beat us. One of the things our canon did that I find unforgivable is painting our dad as a highly abusive parent. They didn't even hint at it in the early seasons, but the further it went, the more they described him that way, culminating in Dean claiming he raised me. Sure, Dean did some of the raising of me, as all older siblings do. His role in my upbringing was much bigger than that of most big brothers. But that was as much because I didn't have a mom as because Dad wasn't there. Dad did teach me important life lessons. He protected me and made sure I got a good education even though we didn't attend school regularly. I'm still a little mad at him because of the fights we had in. All the things we disagreed on so strongly. But he was my dad. Even when I was angriest, I still loved him. That's why it hurt so damn much. But I'm done hearing people talk about him like he was beating us all the time. He wasn't like that. The next day, we gathered up Dad's ashes and put them in a box, intending to bury it beside Mom's grave at some point. Bobby invited us to go back to Sioux Falls with him for a while, and we agreed. We weren't ready to do anything major. Dean got the Impala towed there so he could work on it. Bobby had all the tools he could need, and some of the parts, too. We got not quite comfortable but the next best thing, I guess. Bobby had always been good to us, from the first awkward time we stayed with him. I think I was 3 or so when Dad left us there overnight the first time. Dean, you were almost 4. You would talk to me and Dad in complete sentences, but not say much to people you didn't know well. Sam, yeah, I was in a shy phase. I liked Pastor Jim. I think that was about it for outsiders. Bobby was really nice, but he was different from what I was used to. He has this twang to his voice and always some stubble or a full beard, and he owned the house we were staying in. So I was nervous about doing something wrong, especially after I heard him scold Dean for something. I grabbed Dean's shirt at one point and he was like, "What?" And I spurred something like, "Can we read something?" He looked around Bobby's shelves and told me there wasn't anything for kids. Bobby heard that, and he said, "Well, maybe we can find something he'll like." Then he looked around, skimming along his titles, and finally he found the rudiments of the Latin tongue. "Know any Latin yet, Sam?" I all but hid behind Dean and shook my head. "Would you like to learn?" I think I shrugged. I was seriously crippled with social anxiety at the moment. Dean said, "I don't want to read him a Latin book." I wasn't about to ask him to, either. I wished I'd never said anything. But Bobby said, "That's all right. I'll read it to him after supper. Now, you boys go and wash up. It'll be ready soon." After supper, true to his word, Bobby took me to his sitting room and cracked that almost 200-year-old book open. And he didn't just read it to me. He pointed out each word to me and sounded them out slowly. I was already starting to learn to read. "Dean, it honestly scared me how early you learned stuff." "Sam, don't worry. Be good to me and I'll spare you when I take over the world." Anyway, I already knew my letters and a lot of their sounds, so I started picking up the Latin pretty quickly. When we stopped for the night, he let me take the book to bed with me. I put it under my pillow. It's crazy how he let me do that to a book that was so old and probably valuable. But I'll never forget it. Bobby might not have been a dad himself, but he had a compassion that gave him a huge leg up on what a man needs to be a good father. I think it's because his father was abusive. He wanted to be the friend to us that he wished he had had when he was a kid. Someone older, wiser, stronger, and unafraid to guide him through the hard times. That's what Bobby became to me by the time I was 4 years old. Sam, I'm starting to think we need a separate story to post everything going on here and now. There's just so much. We've mentioned that Mairead goes to church, right? Maybe you assumed so. But since she goes, we go. It was either the first or second time we went that they were having communion, which is the Protestant way of saying observing the Eucharist. Which, if you didn't ever go to any type of church, you might not know means symbolically recreating the Last Supper Jesus had with his disciples. Well, Saz quietly narrated the service for us, reinforcing what the pastor was saying about the bread and juice. They don't use wine at this church, representing Jesus' body and blood, and encouraging us to confess our sins silently as everyone else was. But when the elements came around, he warned us, don't eat that. We knew why. We aren't true believers yet, and it's a sacred rite. You shouldn't participate if you don't believe, or if you have unconfessed sin. And Mairead takes it very seriously. So we all had to take a step away while she ate the scrap of bread and drank the little plastic cup of juice. Then we could come back. Dean complained about the bread smelling good. And it honestly did. Anyway, sometime last month, February 2026, we got there and the assistant pastor was doing an informative message on pornography. It's not funny, but it is. But Dean was managing his own private little battlefield in our row. This is an issue that has been a very tempting vice for him over the years. The speaker went over a lot of points like 1. Sexual activity outside marriage perverts God's plan for men and women. 2. Anything besides a man and a woman within the bounds of marriage is outside God's plan. 3. Pornography is addictive. 4. Like a drug, pornography causes the user to be disappointed in life away from it, and to require more and more extreme versions of it, bigger hits, harder drugs. 5. This addiction causes unrealistic expectations for other people, leading to dissatisfaction in an otherwise healthy relationship. 6. The porn industry is terrible for the people who work in it, with much higher than average rates of suicide ideation. Not to mention dubious consent and possibly even human trafficking at its core. 7. Eventually, the user is consumed by his addiction, branching out to criminal activity, or just becoming too toxic for those who don't share the addiction to be around for long. All of this made Dean more and more uncomfortable. As someone who has viewed very little pornography, I was able to take it pretty well in stride. It made a lot of sense to me. I had always felt that porn was bad for my brother, but I couldn't nail down why, so I hadn't tried to intervene. Now Saz was leading us through some doctrine and Christian principles, and particularly coaching Dean through his attempts to reform, so this discussion made me feel better about the situation. If Dean didn't plan to take the message to heart, he wouldn't have gotten so uncomfortable about it. I haven't pried, but I do know he burned all his magazines already. I'm hoping he's given up his web subscriptions too. I don't even know if he had downloads. Probably. __. Winchester Confidential. 24 Everybody Loves a Clown, Part 2. Still Sam. I kept asking Dean if he was okay. He'd say, sure, or, I'm fine, or something. And I knew he wasn't fine, so I kept asking. I wanted him to be honest for once. But Dean keeps his feelings to himself for the most part. I guess it was inevitable that he eventually lost his temper with me and told me to stop asking. At that time, I was making up my mind about my future. I realized I had given up on Harvard Law. Actually, I'd even given up on Stanford. I was angry about it. That demon kept taking things from me. I wanted to vent about it, but I didn't feel quite that close to Bobby, and I doubted Dean would want to hear me whining. Maybe if I could get him to talk first, then he'd feel obligated to listen. But he wanted me to stop asking if he was okay. I was so frustrated. Then I discovered the message from Ellen Harville. Dad had mentioned her a couple of times, and Bobby vaguely knew who she was. In our canon, I had to track her down from her phone number, but with what Bobby knew, finding the roadhouse wasn't too much trouble. The car Bobby loaned us was actually an old pickup, not a minivan. I guess they wanted Dean to really feel emasculated in the show. So, we got there and met Ellen, Joe and Ash. For once Dean didn't hit on a girl. Dean, hey, I wasn't sure how old she was. Plus Ellen and Dad went way back. What if she turned out to be our half-sister? Sam. That's what was going through your mind. Sheesh. As far as we know, Dad didn't have any affairs until after Mom died. Dean. She was younger than you. Coolda happened. Sam. Whatever. There was no family resemblance. Dean. She took after her mom. Sam. Will you quit interrupting? So, Ellen thought Ash could help us find the demon we were looking for, and in the meantime, we picked up a case she was gathering intel on. I hated the look of it, because it involved clowns, but She also made me feel really sorry for the people involved. A poor kid who thought clowns were just fun let one into her house and it killed her parents. How could we not help them? So, we went to the circus and got ourselves hired. I had already made it pretty clear to Dean that I wasn't likely to go back to college, but at this point I mentioned thinking Dad would want me to keep looking for yellow eyes to avenge Mom. I realize it's a little lousy to want to do what Dad wanted only after he died, but death kind of wipes the slate in a way. I still hated the way our relationship went, but I wanted to honor his legacy. Call it cognitive dissonance, call it what you want. It's complicated. This did cause some tension with Dean for sure. Now is a good time to mention that those EMF readers are total nonsense. Ghosts are supernatural beings. Sure, they can mess with electronics sometimes, but there isn't an electronic device in existence that can measure paranormal activity. I don't care Had you saw on that reality show on whatever streaming service whatever they're measuring, it isn't ghosts. And whatever it's translating, for them, it's just playing whatever they want to hear. N and I have exposed a few fake ghost hunters in our time, and I promise you, most of the compelling evidence they find is faked. Most of the real stuff they find can't be recorded or measured. With that in mind, Dean and I really had our work cut out finding a cursed object or sneaky spirit in a circus. We caught a lucky break when a kid pointed out a clown to her parents, but it didn't seem to be there. In the show, it was a Rakshasa. But in our experience it was just a vengeful ghost that hid itself from adults. We had to do a lot of research on this, digging up old news articles and such. We finally found out that our carnival clown was actually a mime. Over time, mimes became boring to the circus audience, who preferred the funnier clowns. Kids still liked him, but their parents expected them to be more entertained by other attractions, and would skip right over him. He became bitter and refused the urging of the ringmaster to change his costume and routine. He died in poverty and haunted the circus, taking out his fury on the parents of kids who noticed him. The show had this entertaining sequence where Dean got steam blowing through a vent to show us where the Rakshasa was. But you would think a creature who can turn invisible would also figure out how to get around air currents and stuff. Maybe I'm wrong, but as far as I know, Rakshasas are native to India and don't show up at random American circuses. We've had a few foreign monsters turn up in our neck of the woods, but not many. We took out this ghost like any other, salted and burned the bones. Interlude. Everything wrong with the Passion. Castiel. March 10, 2026. We watched the Passion of the Christ. Some elements were realistic, others were interesting, but some were rather offensive. Mr. Gibson made some strange choices. When Jesus announced who he was in the garden, he said, "I am." In the film, no one was fazed. Let me tell you, when this happened, those men fell down flat on the ground. Jesus was announcing not only that he was the man they were looking for, but that he was the living God. He was echoing his previous declaration, before Abraham was, "I am." The torture scene was torture to watch. First they hit him with supple shafts, not unlike those used for making arrows. Then they switched to a cat of 9 tails, or something similar. When his back was torn to shreds, they flipped him over and whipped the front of his body. Make no mistake, the Christ suffered much for your sins, but this is ridiculous, especially when you add in all the flogging he took while carrying the cross. And that's for 2 reasons. First, Jewish law prohibited flogging someone more than 40 times. They were so strict about it that they would always stop at 39 just to make sure they didn't overdo it. True, Pontius Pilate ordered Jesus's beating, and he was Roman, not Jewish. However, Pilate declared that he found no fault with Jesus and ordered the beating strictly to appease the Jewish people, in hopes that they would stop demanding his death. In my world, the beating was 39 stripes. No, I wasn't there at the time, but I was nearby and heard all about it afterward from my brothers who were there. The second reason that all the abuse in the movie is unrealistic is that after all they put him through, Jesus wouldn't have been able to walk a step, let alone lift his cross. Let alone carry his cross. Let alone survive long enough to make it to the hill where they crucified him. As I said, he did suffer a brutal death, and I don't wish to detract from that. I just think the movie took it too far. Lucifer didn't appear to Jesus holding a grotesque, baby, analog. By all accounts, Lucifer wasn't feeling all that confident at this point, and if anything, he wanted to make sure Jesus didn't die. He didn't want the sinless sacrifice to be made. I'll tell you what he did do. He whispered into the ear of the spiteful thief on the cross, the one who told Jesus to save himself and the two thieves if he was really the Son of God. But a raven didn't come down and peck the thief's eyes out. That was a strange cinematic choice. I think Mr. Gibson just wanted to make a horror movie. Lucifer and Mary did not exchange a poignant look through the crowd while Jesus carried his cross. I'm sure Lucifer was there, and Mary was too, but he was not visible to the humans. Any of them. Mary was an ordinary human. She wasn't able to see supernatural beings unless they revealed themselves for a specific purpose, such as Gabriel telling her she would carry God's child. And in this case Lucifer revealed himself to no one. Simon of Cyrene carried the cross by himself, with Jesus following after. I know that doesn't fit all of the lovely imagery that comes with the tradition built up around this event. But that's how it happened. In the film, Simon has quite a character transformation over the course of his few minutes of screen time. It's nice but not how it happened. The nails went through Jesus's wrists, not his hands. If they had been in his palms, they would have torn through, and not held him in place. People interpret it as hands, because in Greek, the same word can mean hand or wrist. But scientists, historians, theologians and this angel agree. The large, square nails went through his wrists, not his palms. I'm grateful that no one held up a cup to catch the blood from the wound in Jesus's side. That would have been the final straw for me. However, I have to say, the grave clothes deflating like a hot air balloon. Dean. Yoda style. Castiel. If you say so. Anyway, when someone returns to their vessel, it doesn't disappear one place, leaving its clothes behind, and reappear naked somewhere else. When I leave my vessel, I come back into it as I left it. But when Jesus came back to his vessel, it had been dead for a day and 2 nights. This still constitutes 3 days, because he was buried Friday, lay there all through Saturday, and rose after dawn on Sunday, and needed quite a shock to come back to life. He exercised an enormous amount of power, and light would have come out of every pore in his human body, like a concentration of lightning for an instant. This is why he left a primitive sort of photograph on the Shroud of Turin. When he resurrected himself, he didn't find the tomb open. His body was transformed, he was no longer bound by the physical world. Although he still adhered to most of its scientific laws. However, he was able to walk right out of the tomb without opening it. The guards watching it never saw him leave. But they did see the angel of the Lord who came to open the tomb and reveal that it was empty. They were so terrified of this brother of mine that they fainted dead away. I wish I could saw why that I had the honor of opening the tomb, but that was one of the others whose name you wouldn't know. How smug he must have felt sitting on top of that stone, waiting for the women who were bringing spices to anoint their Lord's body. Imagine their shock to see the guards unconscious, the tomb open, and an angel waiting to say very smugly, "Why are you looking for a living person among dead people?" Dean. Sounds like a Gabriel move. Castiel. You're thinking of our canon. My Gabriel isn't nearly so. Dean. Smart-assed. Castiel. I was going to say self-serving. So, that was my impression. Thayer wish we hadn't watched it until after I helped Dean study the Gospels more. I hope he didn't get the wrong impression from it. You would think that, having been to hell, Dean would find the violence mild. But after the first section of torment, Dean couldn't look at the screen much anymore. He was deeply moved, and when I put an arm around him, he leaned on my shoulder and muttered things like, "Why would they do that?" I assured him that the spectacle was a bit overblown, but that the Savior did suffer those things for him. I believe Sam held his hand on the other side. Dean. Don't tell them that. Castiel. Why not? Didn't you agree with Sam this morning that? Dean. I know what I said, but I'm not ready for the world at large to know. Castiel. Practically no one is reading our account. Dean. Still. Castiel. Please let me tell things in my own way. You have nothing to be embarrassed about. Dean with a heavy sigh. Fine. Castiel. I feel as if the film brought Dean closer to understanding the sacrifice made for him. And anytime he and Sam have some insight, I wonder if they're ready. I hope that they have come to true belief, found the fear of the Lord and the beginning of wisdom, comprehended their helpless estate, claimed redemption in their Savior but not yet. I pray for them every day. If you pray, I would be grateful if you prayed for them too. It may seem silly, since we're not from your world, but it certainly won't hurt anything. Castiel. Again, so much has happened. There were times when I feared Dean's conversion would take years. But now and then when he couldn't sleep, he would say, "Tell me about heaven," and I would tell him what I was allowed to, a few things he didn't know yet. Dean. Don't tell them all this sappy crap. What are you doing? Castiel. ND. Then I was so delighted that time he said sleepily, "Tell me about Jesus." Dean. You were trying to get me to read the Gospels and I just figured I could get the good parts version out of you and save time. Castiel. And then I started telling him and Sam the story of Joseph, but I had to do it in 3 nights because they kept falling asleep. Sam. You have a very soothing voice. Castiel. Last time, I told you about watching The Passion, and hoping it gave Dean some insight. Sam already knew the gospel story quite well. He has always been more scholarly than Dean, so this isn't the part of Christianity he struggled with. But Dean needed a deeper understanding of Jesus' mission, and it seems the film gave him that. Something finally clicked, as he would say. The next morning, we were praying together as we often did, getting ready for a day of work. Dean opened his prayer as I had taught him, with some thanks for provision and confession of sin. Dean. And my typical, "Help me not screw up today," bit. Castiel. Right, which turned into, "Screw it, I'm all in. No more messing around." He didn't just mention careless thoughts that needed forgiving and a request for protection from temptation. Instead, he described his lifelong career of sins in general. He confessed his understanding that he could not pay for his transgressions himself. He told my father that he understood the payment made for him, that he wanted true forgiveness, that he would repent and try to live within God's will. Dean became my true brother. On March 11th, my father adopted him. I could hear my brothers rejoicing in heaven. I couldn't display my joy to Dean without accidentally smiting him or at least embarrassing him, so I embraced him after the custom of humans, thanked God, and told Dean through my tears that he was my brother. He was saved. He would never have to return to hell. For once, Dean didn't shake his head, roll his eyes, protest, or pull away. He hugged me back for longer than he would ordinarily allow under any circumstances lesser than a deathbed experience. Then he turned to Sam and told him, "You're next." He didn't just mean next to be hugged. Dean. Geez, you going to tell everyone about my screw-ups too? Castiel. Don't be acrimonious. I'm sure they're happy for you, not judgmental. Dean. Acri what? Sam snorts. Dean. Shut up, Sammy. Blank, _, Winchester Confidential. 25 Bloodlust. Sam. Typical vampire case, or so we thought. I have to say, Dean can bond with someone quickly if they have common ground. Go about it the wrong way, and it will take you forever to get him to trust you, but start bragging on your car and your weapons and rave about classic rock, and you and Dean will be thick as thieves until you prove yourself untrustworthy. And unfortunately, that's just about how it was with Gordon Walker. He said the stuff Dean likes to hear. They got drinking, I got irritated. We shouldn't split up, but back then we didn't know how important it was to stick together. I went back to the motel where I got a call from Ellen before getting myself ambushed. The vampires didn't take me away like in our canon. Instead, they got me under control and talked to me right there. They were gone before Dean came back with Gordon. I was shaken up, but trying not to act like it. Dean asked if I was okay. I saw that Gordon was staring at me, so I asked Dean to talk outside. He agreed, and I told him about the vampires living on cattle blood. He didn't believe me. He trusted Gordon's impression of them. I told him Ellen said to keep away from Gordon, and Dean got irritated. Dean hates being told that he's wrong. When you do that, he doubles down, always. Then you have to fight harder to get through to him. I fought harder, and I made it personal. Telling him he was trying to replace Dad. Yes, Dean punched me in the face. It hurts to get hit in the face, but let me tell you, Dean can hit hard. He must have pulled his punch, because I didn't fall over or lose any teeth. While we were fighting, Gordon left, and he took Dean's keys to slow us down. Even though he still didn't want to believe me, Dean turned a corner mentally. You don't mess with the Impala. You don't take his keys. You don't take away his ability to drive his baby. I think this is the reason the script called for me to suggest that Dean and baby needed to get a room at the beginning of the episode. They wanted to give you a clue for the moment when Gordon crossed a line with Dean. Dean lamented that Gordon had a head start, and he was more experienced tracking vampires than we were. I told him, we don't have to track the vampires. We just have to track Gordon. You're good, Dean told me when I picked up Gordon's trail. A pain in the ass, but good. We followed Gordon to the nest. And things went down similarly to Cannon. We left Gordon tied up after we let Lenore and Eli go. On our way back to the car with the keys, fortunately Dean told me I could hit him. I told him I'd take a rain check because he was already pretty beat up. Truth is, I really didn't feel like hitting him after he stood by me. I think he wanted me to hit him because he felt guilty, both for hitting me and for not trusting me from the start, not to mention for possibly killing something that didn't have it coming. I reminded him that he didn't kill Lenore, even though he wanted to. He joked it off, but I think it did make him feel a little better. One thing is for sure, this case made us rethink things a lot. Dean, did you ever return that punch? Sam, I think so much later. Does it matter? Dean, I just like to know the score, that's all. Sam, rolling his eyes, I think there are more important scores to settle. Blank, underscore, blank. Winchester Confidential. 26 children shouldn't play with dead things. Dean, unlike on the show, we didn't stumble across this case near Mom's grave. We got wind of it at the roadhouse and went out to take a look at the weird gravesite where nothing would grow as a favor to a concerned minister. We investigated Angela's death, it led us to Neil, and we found her pretty easily. He had used some ancient ritual and the help of a demon to bring Angela back from the dead, but it was pretty clear that she came back without her soul. She was a shell of a human that only cared about the things animals care about, staying alive, eating and screwing. We managed to convince Neil that she needed to get dead again before she killed him. We stuffed her mouth with salt, which put her in a sort of temporary trance, took her back to the graveyard, pinned her in her coffin with a spike, and burned her in the grave. She screamed friggin' awful, but she wasn't really human anymore, so we didn't feel too bad. And we burned the book Neil got the ritual from, and took him to see the minister to make sure he cut ties with the demon. As far as I know he was okay after that. Sam, I want to add a note. Dean didn't catch me watching porn. The show writers threw that in there for no apparent reason. Dean, notice, he didn't say he didn't watch it. He said I didn't catch him. Sam, hey, Dean. So, after that case, then Sam wanted to visit Mom's grave. I'm like, why? She's not even really buried there. It's not a real grave, just a headstone her uncle put there. Sam, I forgot Mom had an uncle. Dean, she didn't talk about him. I think he cut ties with her parents because he wanted nothing to do with the hunter life. Kinda sucks, but I guess it's nice he gave enough of a crap to get her a stone. Sam eventually convinced me to visit the grave, and he buried Dad's dog tags there. I was feeling guilty as hell. I couldn't stand it anymore. I had to know what Sam would think of me, because I felt so alone and I was sure it was my own fault. I told him I thought I should have died in the hospital, and the reason I didn't was because Dad did something. He did something terrible to take my place. Writing this now, as someone who knows God himself decided to die for people like me, it still hits me hard, thinking about my dad making that decision. Deciding to give up everything for his kid. Everything but one last goodbye that wasn't nearly long enough. Sam couldn't say anything to make me feel better. I knew he wouldn't be able to. But I can say one thing, he didn't leave. He didn't walk away to cool off. Didn't yell at me or change the subject. We just stayed there a while, looking at a headstone sitting on a piece of ground that held no bones. I refused to cry, but I wasn't okay and my body knew it. I didn't sob or anything. But it took crazy willpower to stay quiet while my eyes decided to turn into waterfalls. I don't know if Sam noticed. He didn't say anything. Sam. I was purposely not looking at you. I wanted so badly to make you feel better, but you're right, I couldn't. I noticed you sniffing and stuff. Dean. Yeah, there was a snot situation. Sam. And back at the car I could see your eyes were red. But I still couldn't think of anything to say, and I figured touch would just piss you off. Dean. Pretty much. Blank, underscore, blank. Winchester Confidential. 27 Simon said. Sam. This one was pretty close to canon. I think it's really a shame that Yellow Eyes found twins to target a 2-for-1 deal for him, basically. If he used vague language to get the twins' mother to agree to his bargain, he could give his blood to 2 babies as easily as 1. I don't know what it is about the 6-month marker that was so ideal for his purpose. Saws, any insight? Casti. L. The number 6 has some significance in biblical terms, most obviously the 6 days of creation. If anything, I think the time was symbolic rather than an ingredient of the power he was harnessing. For 6 months, God's rules of nature prevailed in the child's growth, and when the 7th month was set to begin, symbolically while God rested, your adversary crept in and performed his evil work. Sam. Lucifer does like to distort God's creation and actions. Anyway, I didn't like the way this case ended. Andy had to kill his twin. We were fortunate that Andy was the one with the more positive persuasive influence. And that he could so easily convince the cops not to investigate any of us. That kind of ability could really help me and Dean on our hunts. But thinking about Andy and Ansem got me thinking about Max again. And myself. Was I some kind of time bomb? Was I going to be dangerous? Would I end up getting Dean killed? Causing anyone's death was a big fear. Dean tried to convince me that Andy and I could use our abilities for good, but it didn't reassure me. I was sure they had something to do with Mom's killer, and that couldn't be a good thing. My nightmares started taking on a new tone. When I wasn't seeing premonitions or Jess's death, I was seeing myself go off the rails, take orders from a demon, hurt people by accident, or even sometimes on purpose. Dean doesn't like talking about feelings. So even though he wanted to help me, I mostly had to deal with it on my own. The best he could do was wake me up if he was awake when I was dreaming, and to pretend not to feel weird about it. I understood the intention behind it, but the pretense felt wrong. Like we were avoiding something really dangerous festering between us, and we both knew we had to do something, but neither of us knew what. I guess that's why I finally came clean to Ellen. The 2 of us couldn't handle this. We needed more friends, whether they could help directly or not. So, Dean and I why told her and Joe what we were dealing with, or not dealing with, really. Thank God, they didn't turn on us. They believed we wanted to do things right and decided to help if they could. And Ash was still helping us look for our target too. It was a bit of a relief just to know we weren't in it alone. Blank, underscore, blank. Note from Dean. Sam said there was no living with Saws after my conversion. And I get what he meant. He was so freaking happy. Usually, his happiness is just quiet contentment. That comfortable silence. But back on March 11th, he kept smiling. Like, you cool, depower your solar panels if he was standing at the right angle. For Saws, he was practically giddy. Yeah, there was the little matter of Sam still being an infidel. Castiel. I have never called him that. Dean. I'm exaggerating for effect. Saws. Anyway, we were both concerned about Sam, but nothing could dampen his spirits that whole day. I liked seeing him like that, even though it was a little awkw. Ard how he kept coming back to it again and again. My dad adopted you and now we're really brothers. It's funny, we always figured Sam would be the first to adopt the faith, because he believed in angels first. He started praying first, and he's generally just a nicer person than me. But it just didn't go that way. Sam. Yeah, and from that point I had a target on my back. Dean was like, I won't push you but seriously man. Hurry up, Dean. Hey, we always agreed we wanted to be on the same side of this thing. No getting stuck in different places in the afterlife. I know we wanted to make the jump together. But when it clicked for me, I couldn't help it. I had to jump in right then and there. The only bummer was Kit's alter Tori acting like now that I'm a Christian, she can't be my fry. And anymore. Not because she hates me or my faith, but because she's worried she'll taint me or something. Sam, sighing, that's because you're so much alike. I swear, if your roles were reversed, you'd have said the same thing to her. You'd be like, oh no Tori, I've been to hell. I'm bad for you, stay away from me, Dean. I don't sound like that. And I wouldn't say that. Probably. Another alter suggested challenging Tori to stick around because she can't resist a challenge, so that resulted in a race with me on her motorcycle and her driving baby. I had two huge advantages. First, the bike could handle the course better. And second, Tori has a fear of riding in cars. I was distracted by a fear of her crashing my car, but I still beat her. She's good, though, handled the car well considering she has barely driven one at all. I gotta admit, I don't have a lot of motorcycle experience, either. I'm probably lucky I didn't wipe out. She tossed me the keys, but I let them hit the ground and went to hug her instead. I was so relieved she wasn't going to walk out. Sam. But then you totally picked them up after and told your car, I'm sorry, baby. Are you okay, Dean? You don't understand what we have, that car and me. So, then we watched Rebel Without a Cause before bed. It was a good end to the night. Almost perfect, except that Sam wasn't on the Soul Train with me. Sam shakes head and sighs. The end.